Chapter 845. Xiao Wanru took a step back and looked at Yan Shi opposite her in astonishment. In the last life, she had only seen him from a distance and felt that he was good-looking. Now, when she looked at him carefully, she found that there was a heroic spirit in the corners of his eyes and the tips of his eyebrows. He didn't look like a Confucian scholar. If he put on a battle robe, he might look more like a small general. She looked him up and down thoughtfully with her watery eyes. Since she knew that child Yen should have been schemed against, Xiao Wanru still felt a little sympathy for him. Was he influenced by her or for other reasons? It was not until now that she felt that the mystery in the last life was somewhat clear. Yan Shi was also very surprised. He was summoned here by Duke Xing, but he didn't expect that he almost bumped into someone in a hurry. What he saw was a young miss, who was not tall. At first glance, he saw a pair of bright watery eyes. At first glance, the color of her eyes seemed to be a little attractive, but if he looked closely, he would find that her eyes were clear and crystal, which was extremely beautiful. She had a snow-white and tender face, delicate facial features, and long eyelashes that fluttered twice, reflecting the color of her eyes even more like water. Her lips were like the color of a blossoming flower, rich and beautiful, causing her to give off a kind of beauty that could topple cities. The first Miss Xiao? After a trace of surprise flashed in Yan Shi's eyes, he immediately became clear. This was a sudden thought in his mind, but he immediately denied it. Now that the first Miss Xiao had entered the Imperial Palace and became the Emperor's treasure forest, who was this person in front of him? He only heard that the first Miss Xiao was a stunning beauty, but he had never heard of anyone else. He lowered his eyes, stepped aside, cupped his hands respectfully to Xiao Wanru, and then stopped looking at Xiao Wanru. This was a respectful and courteous person. Just now, when he saw her, his eyes were filled with amazement. However, it was only amazement, just like how an ordinary person would feel amazed when they saw a bunch of flowers. There was nothing else. His eyes were clear, and his behavior was even more courteous. Such a person would never have the scandal that happened in her previous life. After thinking about it in her heart, Xiao Wanru winked at Yujie. Yujie understood, took a step forward, put her hands on her waist, raised her head, and scolded, "Who are you? How dare you run around in the Duke's mansion? What if I really hit someone? I'm a scholar living in your mansion. My father and Duke Xing are old friends. Just now, I specially came here because of Duke Xing. I didn't expect to offend you. I'm really sorry." Yan Shi bowed deeply and said very politely. In this way, it seemed that Yujie, the little maid, was unreasonable and impolite. "The High Duke is looking for you. When did you get someone to look for you? You were obviously looking for our miss just now," Yujie said unhappily, looking more and more arrogant. Many manners had this kind of servant girl who would step on the lower and climb higher, especially those first-class servants. Sometimes, they were even harder to serve than their masters. In order to curry favor with her master, she would rush out and act arrogantly and rudely. Of course, the master had to be doted on, and the person in front of her should be one of them. Yan Shi was quite helpless. The servants of the Duke's mansion she had met in the past were not bad, but she didn't expect to meet such an arrogant servant girl. Her question was even more rude, as if Duke Xing could only look for their miss but not anyone else. Although she was unhappy, Yan Shi couldn't argue with a servant girl. She immediately said lightly, "Duke Xing asked someone to call me before, saying that he had something to do with me. He should have come earlier, but he was delayed for a while, so he left in a hurry." Xiao Wanru slightly frowned, and a trace of deepness flashed across the bottom of her eyes. If Yan Shi had come earlier, she would have met her in Xiao Jing's study. Of course, it was also possible that she couldn't come earlier, so she must have met her here. If that was the case, why did she come here? In the last life, she and child Yen had been dragged into a group. In the end, no one got a good result. What about in this life? She raised her watery eyes slightly and asked softly, "Child Yen, are you the son of second uncle's old friend?" Hearing Xiao Wanru's voice, Yujie stepped aside and made way for her. Yan Shi raised his eyes and glanced at the beautiful and charming miss opposite him with a little confusion in his eyes. Except for the shock at first sight, he didn't have a good impression of Xiao Wanru. What kind of master had what kind of servant girl? The servant girl in front of him was not good, so how good could the master be? He didn't expect that Xiao Wanru would be very gentle when she spoke, which was different from what he had imagined. After glancing at Xiao Wanru, he lowered his eyes and said, "My father has a relationship with Duke Xing's mansion. Not just with second uncle, but with our mansion?" Xiao Wanru keenly grasped the meaning of his words. Her heart beat wildly, and it seemed that she had an idea. "Yen," she said coldly. He didn't think it was necessary to talk about this kind of thing with a weak girl in the boudoir. Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes. Seeing his indifference, she knew that she couldn't get anything out of him even if she asked again. She immediately nodded at him and walked forward slowly with Yujie. They were still at the door of Xiao Jing's study, so it was not a place to talk about it in detail. Looking at Xiao Wanru's back, Yen Shi frowned and felt very surprised. Xiao Yanru was such a servant girl, but Xiao Yanru didn't pester her endlessly. It was really strange. She had thought that this arrogant miss would not leave so easily if she didn't want to tell her. He didn't expect that Xiao Wanru would just ask and leave without hesitation. It was really surprising. He couldn't help but look back, and then his heart skipped a beat. Second uncle? If she called him second uncle, she must be the miss of the eldest branch who had been lost outside. She was the granddaughter of and great elder princess, who had a good reputation and observed mourning for her parents in the nunnery for 3 years after recognizing her ancestors. Or now she could be said to be the future Princess Qin. If it was her, everything just now could be explained. She was actually a good servant girl. It was said that she didn't have a good life in Duke Xing's mansion, so she had such a servant girl to protect her master? Young master. The servant followed behind him. Seeing that he was lost in thought, he reminded him. They had come late before. "Let's go." Yen Shi nodded, let go of the sigh in his heart, turned around and strode to Duke Xing's study. In the study, Xiao Jing lowered his head and sorted out the books. Hearing the servant's report, he nodded and let Yen Shi in. After entering the door, Yen Shi bowed to Xiao Jing and respectfully retreated to one side. "Nephew, please sit down first," Xiao Jing said politely. After Yen Shi sat down, he said with a smile, "Your father sent a letter saying that he's going to arrange a marriage for you in the capital city. You're not young anymore. If you can get it this time, your father will be relieved to find another wife." Xiao Jing took out a letter, shook it with a smile, and said, Yen Shi had just received his father's letter, so he knew that it should be sent with his letter. After thinking for a while, he stood up, made an obeisance to Xiao Jing and said, "Uncle, I will follow your orders." Xiao Jing waved his hand, motioned him to sit down, and then said with a smile, "This marriage is a good relationship between the two families. I can't think of any suitable family in the capital city for the time being, but it has always been a way to find a son-in-law. After you pass the examination, there must be a mansion willing to marry you. At that time, I will choose one for you, okay?" "Uncle, I will follow your orders," Yen Shi said gently. Although he looked heroic and gentle when he smiled, which made people feel good about him, he didn't want to refuse Xiao Jing's orders at all. He didn't mean to refuse Xiao Jing's words at all. When he came to the capital city, his father had told him so. His marriage was originally planned to be in the capital city. Now Duke Xing's mansion was in such a situation that they couldn't even take care of themselves, so they really had no time to help him deal with his marriage. "But if you like someone, you can also tell me, and I will help you inquire about it," Xiao Jing said. Yen Shi was silent for a moment and didn't answer immediately. It seemed that he was a little hesitant. "Do you really like a miss from a family?" Xiao Jing asked curiously. Yen Shi was silent again, and then he raised his head and shook his head. "I don't like any miss from a family. I just suddenly remembered something my father said before." His words were very sad. He had been in the capital city for a period of time. In order to prepare for the exam, he usually didn't go out. Now he thought that he really hadn't seen his father for a long time. After you pass the examination, you have to stay in the capital city. Even if your father can't see you, he should be happy to see you like this. Xiao Jing comforted him, and then he changed the topic. "I heard that you are also good at martial arts. Your father's idea of giving up martial arts and becoming a scholar is different from your father's, right? But your father is reasonable and didn't force you to choose martial arts. My father actually wanted me to be a general at the beginning, She said, but I really like reading, so my father gave up. Your father is a reasonable man after all. Xiao Jing sighed, as if he had 100 kinds of melancholy. In the future, you will be a scholar, and your father will be a martial artist. One will be a scholar, and the other will be a martial artist, which will bring out the best in each other. I have to trouble you this time, uncle. She stood up and bowed deeply again. Xiao Jing laughed. You are too polite. If you have any problems living in the mansion, just tell me. Even if you don't come to me, you can turn to the housekeeper. I have already told the housekeeper to wholeheartedly prepare for the Imperial examination. I hope you can get what you want this time, and your father can rest assured. Thank you, uncle. She said respectfully. Then you can leave now. If you have something to say, don't study too late these days. Sometimes it's good to go out for a walk. Yes. She nodded and became more respectful to Xiao Jing. Before coming to the capital city, his father told him that he didn't know the character of the current Duke Xing very well, so he asked him to be careful after coming to the capital city and not to act recklessly. Now living in Duke Xing's mansion, he found that Duke Xing had a good character and took good care of him. But why did such a person have an unvirtuous wife and an unfilial daughter? She left the study with such a thought. Standing outside the study, she looked back at the study behind her. Duke Xing was really a good character, but she inexplicably felt a little strange. Child, are we still going out today? The servant asked. It was because of this that they had been delayed before coming here. Chapter 846. Get out. She thought for a while and said. He did go out to deal with something. Fortunately, Duke Xing did not let him stay in the mansion all the time just now. Child, let's go quickly. Child Wang is still waiting there. The servant nodded and said with a smile. She walked out, but there was a trace of displeasure in his eyes. He did not have a good impression of this nephew of Duke Xing. He always felt that he was a little wretched and did not seem to be a good person. However, he seemed to be very kind to him. Even if he wanted to cut off contact with him for the time being, he could not say it. At the intersection of the corner, Wang Xingxue had been wandering around. When he saw Shi appear in front of him, he rushed over with joy and gasped, Child Yan. Child Wang. Hurry up, let's go quickly. It's not good if we are late. Then we really can't save him. Wang Xingxue said with a happy smile, and his eyebrows and eyes were almost blooming. Child Wang, please wait for us. Shi bowed to Wang Xingxue and took a deep look at him, not understanding why he was happy. Child Yan, you're too polite. It's your kindness that we encountered such a thing. I have nothing to do, and I can't bear to see someone bully a foreigner. Let's go, let's go. If we are late, something serious will happen. Wang Xingxue patted his chest and said righteously. Then he put his hand down and tried to pull Shi's sleeve intimately. Shi raised his hand uneasily and happened to avoid Wang Xingxue's hand. He said lightly, let's go. In fact, he did not like all kinds of accidents caused by a good deed and the friendship between him and Wang Xingxue. But since he had saved him, he had to save him to the end. The cause of the matter was actually very mysterious, but Wang Xingxue, a passerby, was more concerned about it than him. It seemed that Wang Xingxue's character was not as bad as he had imagined. The two of them talked for a while and left in a hurry. On a rockery, Xiao Wanru stood on a high place and watched the two of them leave with cold eyes. Shi and Wang Xingxue were very familiar with each other, so familiar that they almost did not stand on ceremony. She did not expect their relationship to be so good. This matter was very strange. She inexplicably felt that there was something wrong with it. She still remembered that Wang Xingxue had something on Madame of Duke Xing, Madame Jiang, and the evidence that Madame Jiang killed Wang Yishu was still in his hands. But at this time, Madame Jiang was completely useless. Even if he publicized this matter, it would not do much harm to Duke Xing's mansion. So Wang Xingxue actually had nothing to threaten Duke Xing's mansion with now? Wang Xingxue was not a good person. There must be a reason why he jumped up and down to do things. In his previous life, he and Shi were almost destroyed. Was it because of him or Yanxi? What was so special about Yanxi? Was she valued and framed by someone? Who conspired with Duke Xing's mansion and schemed against him and him together? If it was not someone else, could it be someone from Duke Xing's mansion? He didn't know that Yanxi lived in Duke Xing's mansion before, and he was not clear about it. Now that he thought about it, if someone wanted to plot against him, it could only be someone from Duke Xing's mansion. Who was the mastermind? Take a shortcut and ask the coachman to send them off. Xiao Wanru ordered. Wang Xingxue was not willing to walk. She had an intuition that they should go to the place at the city gate she saw that day. It was a long distance from Duke Xing's mansion, and it would take them a while to get there by carriage. There was a secret there. Even if it was a maid, it was not easy for her to seek her own death in order to frame someone else. Who was the person inside? The coachman Xiao Wanru mentioned was the coachman she brought from R in Great Elder Princess's mansion. Now he was under her name and could be regarded as the coachman of Duke Xing's mansion. Yes, miss, I'll go there right away. Yujie understood what she was talking about, nodded, ran down the rockery, and found a path to the parking lot. Wang Xingxue took Yan Shi to the parking lot in the mansion first. Originally, Yan Shi did not want to trouble the people of Duke Xing's mansion. Although Xiao Jing had given her an order, she did not want to trouble them too much if she could. After all, she lived here, and it was really embarrassing to trouble others all the time. However, Wang Xingxue was different. He repeatedly said that this kind of thing was a trivial matter. Moreover, there were many empty carriages in the mansion. It was okay to use any one. If they didn't use it, they would have to go far away. It would take a long time to go out and come back, which was really inconvenient. Since he said so, Yanxi thought that he was right. He still had to save time to study, so she went to the parking lot with him. When they arrived at the parking place, they saw a coachman feeding the horses beside him and throwing fodder. It was just in time. Pick a carriage and send me and Child Yen out. Wang Xingxue did not pick a good carriage, but just pointed at a carriage casually and said to the coachman. The coachman raised his head to look at him, and Yan Shi, nodded without saying anything, drove the ordinary carriage over, and said respectfully to them, "Child, please." In the past, several coachmen were indifferent to Wang Xingxue when they saw him. Everyone knew that this child Wang was not liked by old madam, and even Duke Xing did not pay much attention to him. It was said that he had made a scene in Duke Xing's mansion before and was very unhappy. The coachman did not know the specific reason, but it did not prevent them from knowing that this child Wang was not liked by the masters in the mansion, but the masters did not forbid him from coming. Therefore, the identity of this child Wang was also very embarrassing in the mansion, and the servants in the mansion also ignored him. Today, the coachman was a good person. Seeing that he was still so respectful, Wang Xingxue felt that this long-lost respect made him very comfortable, so he specially patted the coachman on the shoulder to reward him. The two of them got on the carriage, and Wang Xingxue told them an address. The coachman raised his whip and drove the carriage out of Duke Xing's mansion. Then he turned out of the street and headed for the city gate. Xiao Wanru guessed right. It was an address at the city gate. The carriage went all the way forward and made several turns. In some places, it deliberately took a few detours before it reached the destination. The reason why it took several turns was that Wang Xingxue wanted to take the road that Wang Xingxue knew. When they arrived at the back door of a courtyard, they stopped. Wang Xingxue took the lead to jump off the carriage, walked to the back door, and gently knocked on the door a few times. The coachman noticed that there was a certain rhythm in his knocking. Yan Shi also got off the carriage and stood behind Wang Xingxue. There were footsteps coming from inside the door, and then the door was opened. Wang Xingxue saw a servant girl with slightly red eyes. He moved aside, and the servant girl happened to see Yan Shi. "Child Yan," the servant girl said in a sobbing voice. Seeing Yan Shi, she looked very complicated, happy and sad. "What's wrong? How is your miss?" Yan Shi asked. "Child Yan, please come in and have a look. My miss would rather die than obey you. And if there is no other way." The servant girl wiped her tears with a handkerchief. The coachman sat in the carriage. From his position, he could see that the servant girl did not actually cry. She just wiped her tears with a handkerchief, which made it seem that she was really crying. Let's go in first. Wang Xingxue glanced at the coachman warily and said in a low voice, while moving forward to let Yan Shi in. Yan Shi nodded and stepped into the courtyard. The servant girl fell behind. Seeing Wang Xingxue beside her, she also bowed to Wang Xingxue and then turned to follow Yan Shi in. The coachman saw clearly that when the servant girl bowed to Wang Xingxue, their eyes met. This feeling was very strange, as if the servant girl and Wang Xingxue were very familiar with each other. He couldn't tell what kind of feeling it was, but it was like seeing a familiar person, so he did not hide the fact that there were no tears on her face. The coachman had been paying close attention to their behavior. The fifth miss specially asked the servant girl to call him out to keep an eye on Child Wang and Child Yan. This was also the reason why the two of them happened to meet him. Wait here first. We'll go back after Child Yan and I come out. Wang Xingxue said this when he entered the door. The coachman nodded repeatedly and then watched the three of them disappear in the courtyard. This matter seemed very unreasonable. Child Yan was obviously the leader of this matter. When the servant girl came out just now, she also looked at Child Yan. It seemed that the person inside should be someone related to Child Yan. However, the servant girl seemed to be a little familiar with Wang Xingxue and did not stand on ceremony. When the two of them looked at each other, they seemed to understand each other. The coachman was originally a member of and Great Elder Princess's mansion, and later he was given to Xiao Wanru because the coachman was relatively clever. At this time, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that there was something wrong with this servant girl, Wang Xingxue, and the more problematic thing was this matter. Looking around, the coachman stopped the carriage at a corner, which was facing a tree on the roadside, and one end of the branch fell on the courtyard wall. This courtyard wall was the courtyard where Child Yan and Child Wang had just entered. When the carriage stopped, a few branches happened to fall beside the carriage, and a few outside the carriage, even blocking part of the courtyard wall. This was a small alley with few people. After the coachman got off the carriage, he climbed up the courtyard wall with the branches. The carriage was blocked outside, which happened to block the view of passers-by. It was a very small courtyard, and there was nothing special about it. It was like most of the small courtyards in the capital. From the carriage driver's position, he could see such a small courtyard. When he looked again, he saw that the door of the main house was slightly closed. There seemed to be the sound of a woman sobbing, and then she was saying something intermittently. The coachman could not hear what the woman was saying clearly. Sometimes he heard men's voices. Most of the men's voices were Child Wang's, and a few were Child Yan's. They seemed to be comforting the woman. From his position, he could not see what was going on inside, but he could vaguely hear these. Looking around, it was really inconvenient for him to go in. After crying for a while and saying something, the woman's voice became softer. Wang Xingxue was persuading her enthusiastically, and Child Yan's voice could be heard occasionally. After a long while, he saw a figure at the door of the main room move. The coachman nimbly jumped off the courtyard wall, landed on the ground again, and stood casually beside the carriage, quietly waiting for the people inside to come out. Chapter 847. There were many footsteps and voices coming from inside, which were clearer this time because they were outside the house. Miss Xiao, don't worry. Everything will be fine. With Child Yan and me here, nothing will happen to you. That man is just the son of a small official, so he is not a threat. Wang Xingxue's voice, with a comforting tone, became clearer and clearer. Thank you, Child Wang and Child Yan. Without you, I really don't know what to do. I am a weak woman alone in the capital city. If that happens, I'd rather die. The woman's sobbing voice was very delicate, but with a little determination. It sounded very chaste. Miss Xiao, don't worry. This matter will be solved. Yan Shi also persuaded her, feeling a headache. It was not that he didn't want to help, but he really didn't know how to help her at the moment. He was also unfamiliar with the capital city, and the only person he knew was Duke Xing. Should he ask Duke Xing for help? But if he didn't help her, he couldn't do it. He reached out and rubbed between his eyebrows. He had never encountered such a troublesome thing before, so he really didn't know how to deal with it. Miss Xiao was a delicate and pretty girl. She was about 17 or 18 years old and was very beautiful. She had a pair of big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. At this time, when she looked at Yen Shi, it made people's hearts ache. Although her appearance was not the most outstanding, she was still more beautiful than the average person. She was also a bit more fragile. For such a fragile woman to speak of such a matter with such a resolute expression, it was truly lamentable. Seeing her relying on him wholeheartedly, Yen Shi felt a headache. "Don't worry, young Master Yen, and I will definitely help you solve this problem. You can count on us." Such a playboy actually dared to do such a thing. "It's really infuriating," Wang Xingxue said with a face full of anger. Hearing Wang Xingxue's words, Yen Shi was speechless. In fact, he wanted to discuss this matter with Wang Xingxue, which seemed to be extremely complicated. He was really just the son of a small official. How could he dare to do such a thing? This was the capital city, not Bianchue town. Any official was more powerful than this small official. How could his son develop such a character? Was it really because of ignorance? "Thank you, child Yen. Thank you, child Wang." She took a handkerchief and wiped her face. When she raised her head again, she had a beautiful smile on her face. She looked very delicate, like a lily in the wind, tender and beautiful. She looked at Yen Shi affectionately and said, "Young Master Yen, thank you for your trouble." While they were talking, they arrived at the door. The maid opened the door. Miss Xiao didn't see them out. She just stepped aside and held the maid's shoulder. She looked at Yen Shi reluctantly and said, "Child Yen, if you can save me in the future, I will definitely." She didn't finish her sentence and blushed instead. Before Yen Shi could speak, Wang Xingxue had already clapped his hands and said to Miss Xiao with a smile, "Miss Xiao is indeed a sentimental person, but our brother Yen is not an ordinary person either. In the future, he will be the top scholar." Yen Shi frowned. She didn't like Wang Xingxue's exaggerated words. "Wang Gongzi, let's go." After saying that, he took the lead and walked out the door. Hey, let's go back." Wang Xingxue nodded repeatedly. Seeing that Yen Shi had gone out of the door, he turned his head and squinted at Miss Xiao secretly. His eyes fell on Miss Xiao's beautiful face with a bit of lasciviousness. Miss Xiao lowered her face, as if she didn't see Wang Xingxue's gaze. Wang Xingxue turned around and left with a smile. When he arrived outside the courtyard, he saw that Yen Shi was already waiting for him by the carriage. He immediately stepped forward with a smile and said, "Child Yen, please." Yen Shi nodded and got into the carriage. Wang Xingxue also climbed into the carriage with her. The coachman turned the carriage flexibly. When he turned around, he happened to see Miss Xiao, a beautiful woman, inside the door. His eyes became gloomy at once. He didn't know this lady. It seemed that she noticed the coachman spying. Miss Xiao signaled to the maid. The maid came over and closed the courtyard door. The master and the maid hid behind the door together. "Child Yen, what do you think of this matter? Should we tell uncle?" Wang Xingxue couldn't wait to ask as soon as he sat down. Yen Shi frowned. He didn't know how to deal with it now. Seeing him frown tightly, Wang Xingxue said again, "It's useless for me or you to intervene in this matter. Only if uncle knows it and asks him for help can we settle this matter." Miss Xiao came to the capital city alone to find her relatives. It's okay that she didn't find her relatives, but she even encountered such a thing. It's really pitiful. If Child Yen didn't meet her, she and her maid would have 2 lives. Speaking of this, Wang Xingxue sighed. There was a hint of sorrow in his voice. "Ask Duke Xing for help?" Yen Shi finally said. "You'd better do so. Otherwise, we can't ask anyone else. Besides, that minor official is not a big official. As long as uncle says something, this matter will be over. The minor official's son can't rob Miss Xiao, and Miss Xiao can find her relatives with peace of mind." Wang Xingxue nodded repeatedly. Yen Shi fell silent again. This idea was actually good, but it was still very difficult to implement. There had to be a reasonable reason to ask Duke Xing for help. In fact, he had nothing to do with Miss Xiao. It was really difficult to say it in front of Duke Xing. Speaking of this matter, Yen Shi saw injustice and saved a miss who was stopped by a playboy. This miss came to the capital city alone. At that time, she was going to the Buddhist temple to offer incense. After she was chosen by a playboy, He wanted to beat her and happened to meet Yan Shi, who was out to play. All in all, it was a very coincidental thing. The foppish playboy was driven away, and Yan Shi wanted to leave after saving Miss Xiao. Unexpectedly, Miss Xiao fainted. Yan Shi had no choice but to send Miss Xiao over. After that, she met Wang Xingxue. Wang Xingxue was also very enthusiastic and accompanied him. Unexpectedly, there was a follow-up to this matter. It seemed that the foppish young master did not give up. He found Miss Xiao and forced her to be his concubine. Miss Xiao's intention was that even though her family had declined and she had to come to the capital alone to seek shelter with her relatives, she would not be his concubine. She was a girl from a good family and would never be a concubine. If he forced her too much, she would die. Such a will was not bad and was very admirable. If Yan Shi did not know it, it would be fine. Now that she knew it, she could not just watch her be forced to death in vain. That was why she took care of her. But now this matter was very difficult to solve. Child Yan, I heard that you don't have a fiancé yet. If you tell me that Miss Xiao is your fiancé, my uncle will have a reason to intervene. Wang Xingxue rolled his eyes and helped to come up with an idea. He knew what Yan Shi was worried about. In his opinion, there was nothing to worry about. No. Yan Shi shook her head decisively. Why not? You just said it. Don't you understand what Miss Xiao means? If you really help her and solve her predicament, she will definitely be willing to marry you regardless of her status. Wang Xingxue reminded Yan Shi indifferently. That was exactly what Miss Xiao meant just now. Child Wang, please don't say that. If I get her recompense, won't I ruin her innocence? It was not easy for her to refuse to be a concubine, but now she is my concubine. It's not good, it's really not good. Yan Shi shook his head repeatedly and felt that this matter was really inappropriate. Miss Xiao was a noble person at first glance. How could such a person dare to be a concubine? Even if she said so, it was impossible for her to really do it. Then what do you think we should do? Wang Xingxue spread his hands and pushed all the blame to Yan Shi. He did not think that this matter was originally promised by him, and he was the one who patted his chest to guarantee it. Yan Shi frowned and pursed her lips in silence. At the moment, she was also at a loss. The sound in the carriage quieted down, leaving only the heavy breathing of the two of them. The coachman's attention had been focused on the carriage. On the way here, the two of them had hardly talked, but now they talked a lot when they went back. The carriage slowly returned to Duke Xing's mansion. When he arrived at Duke Xing's mansion, he had almost figured out what he had heard. After the carriage stopped, Yan Shi and Wang Xingxue got out of the carriage together. Yan Shi took out a small pouch from her bosom and handed over some broken silver to the coachman. The coachman nodded repeatedly to thank her. Wang Xingxue didn't do anything. He just pulled Yan Shi's sleeve and left directly, not showing any respect to the coachman at all, as if it was the coachman's duty to send him, a master who was not his master. The coachman held the broken silver given by Yan Shi in a good temper and watched the two of them leave with a smile. When Qing came back to report the news from the coachman, Xiao Wanru was making clothes for Chu Luqian, which were the measurements he had asked someone to send to her early in the morning. Yu Jie and Chu Lu helped her cut, and they listened to Qing Er's words silently. After Qing Er finished speaking, Yu Jie put down the needle and thread in her hand and said in surprise, "This Miss Xiao seems to have bad intentions, but why does she plot against Child Yan? I heard that Child Yan is just the son of an old friend of Duke Xing, so he is of no great use in the capital city, right? Is it possible that Child Yan is very rich, so she wants to plot against him?" Chu Lu blinked and asked, following Yu Jie's thoughts. Xiao Wanru didn't put down the scissors in her hand. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice, and there was a hint of fierce hostility in her deep eyes. If she guessed correctly, they wanted to ruin Yan Shi's future. But he was just an ordinary scholar who came to the capital city to take the Imperial examination. Who targeted him? There were many people on the Imperial examination list, but why was Yan Shi the only one? There should be something she didn't know. Go and find out about Child Yan. Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and said slowly. It seemed that Yan Shi should be the one to solve this mystery. She had a vague feeling that Yan Shi's matter must have something to do with her. "Miss, I'll go and find out now." Yu Jie was a straightforward person. Hearing Xiao Wanru's words, She immediately wanted to turn around and go out. Let Nanny Yu go. She is more familiar with the people in the mansion. Xiao Wanru stopped her. Compared with Nanny Yu, Yu Jie had always been with her, so it was easy to arouse suspicion. Xiao Wanru slightly raised her cherry lips and said meaningfully, Nanny Yu, don't ask directly. Let's start from other places. Let's start with second uncle. Chapter 848. It was a few days later when Nanny Yu came back with the news. It was not that Nanny Yu was inefficient, but that she didn't want others to find out that the Piaoyuan courtyard paid attention to Child Yen. After all, this matter couldn't have anything to do with Xiao Wanru. It was unreasonable for her to send someone to inquire about it. Miss, the Yen family is Bian Chue's family. They have been guarding the border for a long time, and they can be considered friends with our family. We have to trace this back to the High Duke. At that time, the High Duke and the old master of the Yen family were very good brothers. I heard that they had fought alongside the late emperor, and their friendship could be said to have been through life and death together. Nanny Yu picked out some useful information and reported it to Xiao Wanru. I also heard that the two families wanted to marry at that time, but because neither of the two families had a lineal miss, they had to give up this matter. Moreover, our duke's mansion accompanied the former emperor to the capital city, and the Yen mansion still stayed in Bian Chue to guard. Hearing this, Xiao Wanru blinked her watery eyes gently and grasped the key point. The friendship between the two families is not the friendship between second uncle and Lord Yen. Yes, it should be like this. It's not just the friendship between Duke's mansion, but the friendship between the two mansions. I heard that old madam also cares about Child Yen very much and sends someone to the outer courtyard from time to time to ask about him. Nanny Yu nodded. She had taken a few detours to inquire about these words without batting an eyelid. In order not to be discovered and affect her Mrs. reputation, Nanny Yu was very careful. She was afraid that the slightest mistake would damage her Mrs. reputation. In fact, in Nanny Yu's opinion, her Miss should not pay attention to an outsider at this time. Her Miss was about to become Princess Jin. If it was discovered, she might be used by someone with evil intentions and cause a great disturbance. After all, there were few people in Duke Xing's mansion who were kind to her Mississippi. Seeing Xiao Wanru remain silent, Nanny Yu cautiously persuaded her, Miss, I think this kind of thing has nothing to do with you. Knowing that Nanny Yu meant well, Xiao Wanru nodded and changed the topic. Child Wang has appeared in our mansion from time to time recently. This young Master Wang is really annoying. No master likes him. Every time he comes, he really thinks he's a big boss. But the High Duke didn't say anything, so everyone can only let him come and go. There was a lot of news about Wang Xingxue. Even if Nanny Yu didn't ask around carefully, she still heard a lot. This young Master Wang hadn't been here for a period of time, but recently he came more frequently. After he came, he liked to put on airs, as if he really regarded himself as a master in the mansion. It was really annoying. Didn't he not come when Miss Wang was gone? Xiao Wanru asked with a trace of gloominess in her eyes. She clearly remembered that Wang Xingxue did not come to the mansion when she entered the palace for the consort selection. What happened to Wang Yishu at that time made him fall out with Duke Xing's mansion. What was more, he threatened Duke Xing's mansion at that time, so even old madam had to go to worship Wang Yishu. Old madam, who was arrogant and noble, felt a little bitter to bear with it. At that time, Wang Xingxue was also fearless. It was obvious that he had a new backer behind him. Otherwise, Duke Xing's mansion would not have shown weakness and made old madam compromise. Not only did old madam send him a house, but she also took a group of sisters to worship Wang Yishu, which could be considered as giving Wang Xingxue enough face. In this case, the most normal behavior was that Wang Xingxue should no longer have contact with Duke Xing's mansion. They were originally a distant relative, so he could not go to Duke Xing's mansion in the future. After the Zhang's accident, the evidence in Wang Xingxue's hands also lost its effect. Even if Wang Xingxue wanted to come back, old madam would definitely not agree, let alone watch him act presumptuously in the mansion without saying a word. Since the evidence had lost its effect, old madam would ask the people in the mansion to never allow Wang Xingxue to enter the mansion. However, the current situation was not like this. It seemed that she turned a blind eye and let Wang Xingxue do whatever he wanted in the mansion, and the result of his doing had something to do with Yan Shi. After thinking about what the coachman reported for a long time, Xiao Wanru came to the conclusion that Wang Xingxue was absolutely not innocent in the matter between Yan Shi and Miss Zhao, and it could even be his plot. So what was Wang Xingxue's plot? Of course, it could also be said that the person behind Wang Xingxue was plotting something. This matter should have something to do with Duke Xing's mansion. Otherwise, with Wang Xingxue's previous actions, he would not be able to enter the gate of Duke Xing's mansion. Now he not only entered, but also seemed to come and go calmly. Although the servants hated him, if their masters didn't say anything, the servants would at most gossip behind their backs. Nanny, you'd better pay attention to Child Wang. He and his sister used to have a grudge against me. Even if someone finds out that you are asking about him, it doesn't matter. Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows and had made a decision in her heart. Okay, I understand. Nanny Yu nodded hurriedly and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She was really worried that her master had taken a fancy to Child Yen. Her master was about to get married, and it was not good to pay attention to an outsider at this time. On the day of Xiao Hua An's marriage, Xiao Wanru got up early. Although it was the groom's house, she had prepared all the affairs early. After a little breakfast, Xiao Wanru went to old madam's Chuntang courtyard. As soon as she entered the door, she heard a burst of laughter. It turned out that all the people of the third branch were here. In fact, not only the third branch, but also Xiao Jie was released and sat down with her head lowered. The third madam, who had always been in poor health, also got up early today. She sat on one side of old madam, and on the other side of old madam sat Xiao Jie, Xiao Caihuan, and Xiao Kailing. Seeing Xiao Wanru come in, the third madam said to old madam with a smile, "Mother, look. I mentioned Wanru just now, and here she is." Old madam raised her eyes, glanced at Xiao Wanru, and snorted coldly with a very cold attitude. Xiao Wanru was used to this kind of cold attitude. She stepped forward and bowed deeply to old madam respectfully. Old madam waved her hand and said, "Sit down first. We are waiting for you." Xiao Wanru retreated to the chair beside the third madam and sat down. She slightly raised the corners of her mouth with a little sarcasm. He was reprimanding himself for being the last to arrive, but in fact he had woken up early today, much earlier than the usual greetings. However, judging from their appearance, they should have been here for a while. Someone should have informed them to come in advance. She obviously didn't receive such a message. "Mother, how should we arrange today's affairs? You know that I am in poor health." The third madam coughed in a low voice and gently covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Ever since he met third madam's body seemed to be in poor health. "We don't care about the affairs of the outer court. You are in charge of the affairs of the inner court. Since you are in poor health, let third maid and fifth maid help you. Fourth maid will receive those misses and accompany them to chat and stroll. I will stay in the flower hall and talk with those madams who don't want to walk." Old madam cleared her throat and said. Xiao Wanru's hand holding the handkerchief tightened slightly and then relaxed. This was a little unexpected. She had thought that she could just accompany them like this, but she didn't expect that she would be assisting the third madam. She didn't know anything about the affairs of Duke Xing. In fact, she was not as useful as a supervisor nanny in the mansion. "Wanru, how about you manage the kitchen for third aunt?" The third madam looked at Xiao Wanru with a smile and said, "Third aunt? I don't know about these." Xiao Wanru looked at the third madam nervously with a blank look. It was not a matter of a day to manage a kitchen. Today, she was suddenly in charge of it. In this case, if anything went wrong, she would have to take responsibility. Xiao Wanru didn't think it was a good idea. "How about you manage the tea for third aunt?" The third madam seemed to feel that this matter was embarrassing for Xiao Wanru, so she didn't insist. After thinking for a while, she asked with a smile. She refused the first time, but it was not convenient for her to refuse the second time. Moreover, managing the tea could not be simpler than managing the kitchen. "Okay, then I will help third aunt manage the tea. If I do something wrong, please teach me." Xiao Wanru agreed softly, and then sat quietly aside, listening to old madam and the third madam discuss everything at the banquet. After everything was settled, old madam asked the stewards of various departments to come over. The third madam went to the wing room to meet the stewards and arrange everything today. Xiao Wanru and Xiao Caihuan accompanied the third madam. They were the third madam's helpers today, so they naturally stayed with the third madam as much as possible. Xiao Caihuan still wore a veil and sat quietly beside the third madam. Although she smiled kindly and gently at Xiao Wanru, she didn't look very flattering like before. It seemed that she had returned to her former appearance. Although the third madam was in poor health, she was very skilled and neat in doing things. During this period of time, everything in Duke Xing's mansion was handled by her, so she was very familiar with it now. After being instructed, the stewards of various departments left one by one and went to do their own work. The third madam asked Xiao Wanru and Xiao Zihuan to check the part of the affairs assigned to them respectively. Xiao Wanru went to the tea room with Yu Jie. She was now mainly responsible for the tea of the guests in the inner courtyard, and the reception of the womenfolk was also placed in a large flower hall in the inner courtyard. The tea room was at the side of the large flower hall. It was not a very small one and was a separate courtyard. When Xiao Wanru came over, the servant girls and old maids inside were busy. Of course, the tea was not only tea, but also some fruits and snacks. They were placed on plates one by one. Seeing Xiao Wanru coming over, the nanny in charge of the tea room hurriedly came over to greet her with a smile. When she was at the third madam's place just now, the third madam had already explained that this matter was under the charge of the 5th Mississippi. Are the snacks served today so exquisite? Xiao Wanru looked at the steaming plate of snacks and asked. In order to curry favor with Xiao Wanru, the nanny in charge specially took them out of the steamer. The small plate of snacks looked, smelled, and looked good. At first glance, it could be seen that they were excellent, especially when Xiao Wanru just had a little breakfast in a hurry. Looking at such soft and glutinous snacks, she really felt hungry. Chapter 849. 5th Miss, this pastry doesn't come from our mansion. It was sent from Minister Zhao's mansion. After third madam asked us to try it and found that it was really good, she asked us to make it today and invite the madams and misses of our mansion to enjoy it. The nanny in charge explained with a smile. Xiao Wanru picked up a piece of pastry with chopsticks, tasted it, and then nodded. It's really good. It tastes good and looks good. 5th Miss, I heard that this prescription was made by the first Miss Zhao herself. The Zhao's mansion has never taken it out before. This time, because the first Miss Zhao is going to marry into our mansion, they sent this prescription to our mansion. The nanny in charge smiled happily. It was naturally an excellent thing to be praised by her master. The 5th Miss was no longer the 5th Miss of the past. He had to curry favor with her properly. Xiao Wanru nodded. After eating a piece of pastry, she stood up and patrolled the wing room. At this time, some womenfolk had come over. Xiao Wanru didn't go out and just sat in the courtyard where tea was prepared. Xiao Kaling and old madam were supposed to accompany the guests, so it was not her turn to do so. He could just take a break and sit here for a while. However, she didn't succeed in the end. After sitting in the courtyard for a while, she saw an old maid rushing over. Seeing Xiao Wanru sitting in the courtyard, she hurriedly came over and saluted. 5th Miss, old madam asked you to make some good tea and some pastries. There's no need to add too much sugar. It's not good for an old lady to eat too much sweet food. Go and prepare some pastries that are not too sweet and send them to old madam. Xiao Wanru nodded and ordered the nanny in charge who had been standing beside her. 5th Miss? The nanny in charge said with a bitter face. What's wrong? What's the problem? Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows, put down the teacup in her hand leisurely and asked. 5th Miss, the pastries are basically sweet, and the prescription sent by the Zhao's mansion is even sweeter. The nanny in charge said in embarrassment. So you didn't prepare pastries that are not too sweet? Xiao Wanru narrowed her eyes and said with a cold look. At the banquet, it was natural to have as many flavors as possible. A single flavor could only be liked by some people, and most people didn't like it. It was hard to appease everyone, so it was always better to prepare a few more. The pastries sent by Minister Zhao's mansion are very good. We all feel that they are fresh and made. There are many people who like them. I didn't expect. The supervisor nanny was in a dilemma and murmured, "Fifth miss, hurry up. Madame Dowager is waiting for you." The old maid sent by Madame Dowager said impatiently. Then she turned around and left. "Fifth miss, what should we do?" The nanny in charge was dumbfounded and stammered. Xiao Wanru took a deep breath, calmed down the anxiety in her heart, stood up, and walked to the largest room in the middle, which was mainly used to make snacks. The desserts inside were steaming hot, and the air was filled with white steam. When they entered, they felt like they were blinded and couldn't see clearly. The smell of dessert overflowed from the inside. It smelled good, but if one smelled it too much, it would indeed be a little disgusting. Old people really shouldn't eat these kinds of overly sweet snacks. Are the pastries made in our mansion gone? Xiao Wanru looked at the situation in the room and asked. There were pastries in the past, but it's too late now. The supervisor nanny said with trembling hands. It would take a while to make a pastry, and it would take some time to knead the powder, steam the pastry, and some other time. According to the current situation, they might not be able to use the pastries at noon. Madame Dowager urged them urgently. If she didn't send them to them quickly, she was afraid that she would come to urge them again later. What's that? She glanced at a few small pieces of leather beside the stove and asked. That's to make spring rolls. The kitchen asked us to make them. There's also a large pot of bean paste. They said that when the dishes are officially served, we are still free. They asked us to help prepare such a dessert, which is also sweet. The supervisor nanny spread her hands helplessly and said, There should be minced meat stuffing in the kitchen. Go get a pot and wrap it with minced meat stuffing. Make it like the original spring rolls. Xiao Wanru ordered. Fifth miss, is it edible? The supervisor nanny opened her eyes wide and said in astonishment. Spring rolls had always been wrapped with bean paste. She had never heard that it could be wrapped with minced meat. Go and ask someone to get the minced meat. Hurry up, Xiao Wanru said lightly. This dessert had always been sweet in the capital city, but in fact, when in Jiangzhou, it could be wrapped with other things and made into salty ones. Seeing Xiao Wanru being so decisive, the supervisor nanny could only follow her words. She asked someone to get some minced meat and freed up a few people to make salty spring rolls under the leadership of Yu Jie. In fact, it was very simple and fast. After wrapping the minced meat, they were fried in the oil pan. There was very little minced meat wrapped in it. After a few flips, it floated and was ready to be used. The first pot of fried salty spring rolls was soon ready. The supervisor nanny put down the chopsticks in her hand and breathed a sigh of relief. Fifth miss, Madame Dowager urges you to hurry up. At the door, the old maid sent by old Madame came again. It was too foggy inside, so she couldn't find Xiao Wanru for a while, so she stood at the door and said. In fact, Xiao Wanru was standing by the door. When she heard the sound, she turned around and walked out of the atrium in the middle. The old maid didn't expect Xiao Wanru to stand so close. After being stunned for a moment, she hurriedly followed her out and said, Fifth miss, Yu Jie came out from inside, handed the plate in her hand to the old maid and said, Here, hurry up and send it to old madam. Isn't this sweet? Just now, old madam said that even the pastries can't be too sweet, let alone the ones with bean paste filling inside. The old maid glared at Yu Jie unhappily. Just take it. If anything happens, I'll take full responsibility. Xiao Wanru said, walked to the courtyard and sat back in her previous seat. Seeing Xiao Wanru like this and then looking at the newly fried spring roll in her hand, the old maid stamped her foot helplessly. Stamp his foot and turned around to leave. Since the fifth miss said that she would take full responsibility for it, as a servant, of course, she couldn't really go against the fifth Mississippi. When old madam got angry later, the fifth miss would be reprimanded by old madam. In the flower hall, old madam and several older madams were talking and laughing enthusiastically. Seeing the old maid bring a plate of spring rolls, old madam's face darkened. She had already told the old maid not to make it sweet, but it seemed that it was sweeter than sweeter. Old madam, the fifth miss asked me to specially send it here. She said that old madam would like it. The old maid didn't dare to complain openly, but secretly pointed out that it was Xiao Wanru's idea. Old Madam's face became more and more ugly, and she couldn't keep the smile on her face. When she gave the order just now, she said it in front of a group of old madams. Now Xiao Wanru's attitude made her feel like she had been slapped in the face. It smells quite fragrant. Let me try one. Another old madam beside her sniffed and said with a smile. An old maid behind her hurriedly came over with a small plate and put it in front of her. Old madam picked it up and took a bite. She was stunned at first and then surprised. In the end, she nodded repeatedly and said, "Good, it's really good. It's really fragrant." As she said, she ate up the spring roll in front of her in a few bites. "Is it really delicious? Not sweet?" Another old madam asked in surprise. "It's not hard. It's a little loose and salty. It tastes very good," Old Madam said with a smile. She motioned the old maid beside her to take another one, and then she ate it with relish and nodded while eating. Seeing that she ate so satisfactorily, the other old madams couldn't help but take one by one. After tasting it, they all nodded. They were used to the sweet ones, but this kind of salty one had a unique flavor. Moreover, it was newly made, so it tasted very delicious with a little crispness after being fried. Old people could also eat it. The anger on Old Madam's face slowly faded away. She also asked Nanny Yu to take one and took a bite gently. It tasted very good and very tempting. She nodded calmly at the moment, which showed that she was satisfied with Xiao Wanru's decision. "Old Madam, your granddaughter is really capable. She actually made such good spring rolls. I'll go to my mansion to try it later. I'm getting old and I'm tired of eating too many sweet things." Old Madam, who ate the first one, put down the chopsticks in her hand with a smile on her face. She was very satisfied with Xiao Wanru's decision. She is indeed capable. How can Princess Qin, who was personally chosen by the Empress Dowager, be not good? Another two old madams joked. Although Old Madam didn't like Xiao Wanru, she was still very happy to hear Xiao Wanru being praised like this. She immediately narrowed her eyes with a smile and said modestly, "She is just a child and doesn't know much. Let her manage the affairs over there. She has to learn something slowly in the future." Xiao Wanru was the future Princess Qin. After marrying into the Prince Chen's mansion, she would definitely be in charge of the inner court. She should indeed learn some management methods of the inner court. However, neither Old Madam nor Xiao Jing seemed to think of this matter, and no one thought of helping her. Now Old Madam brought it up, it seemed that it was a good thing. The misses in the mansion are all smart. Even the youngest fifth Miss Xiao is so smart. She's really likable. Not to mention her good looks, I can't say anything about her character. None of my granddaughters have ever thought of such an idea. Old Madams flattered Old Madam one after another, which made Old Madam smile from ear to ear. She said repeatedly, "The misses in your mansion are also as beautiful as flowers." Even though this matter was over, Old Madam still asked an old maid to pass on her words of praise to Xiao Wanru. Since they liked it, Xiao Wanru asked the tea room to make more and sent them to other womenfolk. 2 plates of different pastries were sent out together. However, according to the servant girls who came back, everyone's favorite was not the previous plate of sweet and glutinous pastries, but the new salty spring rolls that Xiao Wanru came up with. There were even servant girls from other mansions who asked the servant girls in the tea room how they made it, what to prepare and what to pay attention to. Xiao Wanru, who was sitting in the yard, sneered when she heard such a message. Someone had predicted that she would take care of this matter, so they deliberately let her mess up the matter and lose face today to show their power. Chapter 850. Not only did she suffer a loss for no reason, but she also got angry. Since the matter had been solved, Xiao Wanru asked the nanny in charge to keep an eye on it. If there was anything that couldn't be solved, the nanny in charge should report to her immediately. She went back to the Piaoyun courtyard and changed into a new set of clothes. When she came back, the bridal sedan chair of the newlyweds had already entered the door. Xiao Wanru didn't go back to the tea room but went directly to the Qiuhui courtyard with Yu Jie to see the newlyweds. The Qiuhui courtyard was covered in red. The clothes hanging under the porch and draped over the door were all red, which made people feel happy. In the bridal chamber, the newlyweds were sitting on the bed. The veil on their heads had been removed. At this moment, They were sitting there shyly and listening to the praises of the people in the bridal chamber. "Fifth sister, you happen to be here. Let's go in together." Xiao Taihuan happened to come over and invited Xiao Wanru with a smile. Xiao Wanru nodded and they entered the bridal chamber together. There were several madams and misses in the bridal chamber. Seeing them come over, they bowed and laughed, which was particularly lively. Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on Zhao Shiran with a smile. Today, Zhao Shiran looked shy, like an ordinary newlywed, which was different from the feeling of being completely aloof from the matter that day. At this time, she seemed to have the feeling of marrying into Duke Xing's mansion. Xiao Wanru stood aside calmly and watched Xiao Taihuan teasing the bride with others. Xiao Wanru just smiled slightly and didn't get too close to her, nor did she give her the cold shoulder. Those who had never seen Xiao Wanru couldn't help but be amazed by her beauty. They looked at the bride sitting on the bed and then at fifth Miss Xiao, who was not very well dressed. They secretly compared them in their hearts and couldn't help sighing that fifth Miss Xiao was really beautiful. Even the bride, who was so richly dressed, lost her beauty in front of her. The banquet had begun outside, and the womenfolk in the bridal chamber began to leave. Xiao Wanru and Xiao Taihuan, who were the masters, were not in a hurry, so they simply stepped aside and let the womenfolk go first. For a moment, the bustling bridal chamber quieted down. "Fifth sister, shall we go there now?" Xiao Taihuan looked at Xiao Wanru and asked. Xiao Wanru hesitated for a moment. She and Xiao Taihuan performed their respective duties, so there was no need for them to go back in such a hurry. Even if they went back at this time, they were not in a hurry to have lunch. "Third sister, fifth sister, don't go yet." Zhao Shiran, who had been sitting on the bed like a mute, suddenly said, "Sister-in-law, what's the matter?" The two of them turned back together, changed their address with a smile, and entered the gate of Duke Xing's mansion. From then on, there was no first Miss Zhao, but only the first grandma of Duke Xing's mansion. Zhao Shiran stood up and walked to his dressing table. He took out a jewelry box from the top drawer of the dressing table and said to the two of them with a smile, "You two sisters have been busy today because of me. I'm afraid you can't even eat in peace. I thank you here. Here are 2 palace flowers I made myself. I want to give them to you as a thank you gift." Zhao Shiran said as he pushed the jewelry box in front of them. The two of them looked up and saw 2 exquisite silk flowers in front of them. "It's so beautiful." Xiao Taihuan's eyes lit up. She immediately took out a purple palace flower and said, "I've never seen such a beautiful palace flower before. Even in the palace, there is no such beautiful palace flower, is there?" This silk flower was not only in the shape of a flower, but also had a pendant below, which made the originally beautiful palace flower more charming. Duke Xing's mansion had the flowers in the palace, which were usually given by the masters in the palace. Xiao Wanru also had a few boxes which were given by the Empress Dowager before, but compared with the one in front of her, it was obvious that the one in front of her was more beautiful, and some small branches and leaves were also scattered beautifully. "It's good that you two sisters don't dislike it. I made it myself. I was afraid that you two sisters wouldn't like it." Zhao Shiran breathed a sigh of relief, which made people feel good. "Sister-in-law, you are so polite. If such a beautiful flower is not beautiful, how can it be beautiful?" Xiao Taihuan said with a smile. She did not put down the purple flower in her hand. She liked this purple one. "Thank you, sister-in-law." Xiao Wanru also thanked her politely with a smile. There was a pale white flower with pink embellishments left in the flower box. It was elegant with a bit of glamour, which was Xiao Wanru's favorite color. The 2 flowers happened to be her and Xiao Taihuan's favorite. "Don't mention it. Thank you for your trouble today." Zhao Shiran bowed deeply and said, "How dare the 2 of them accept her bow?" After avoiding her, they bowed back. Seeing that it was getting late, Xiao Taihuan and Xiao Wanru said goodbye and went out. They had to go out at this time. They were afraid that old madam and the 3rd madam would have to ask them for help. The 2 of them parted at the gate of Qiuhui courtyard and went to their respective areas. Xiao Wanru went to the tea room. At this time, the tea room was not so busy, but everyone was tidying up and seemed to be in a good mood. When the nanny in charge saw Xiao Wanru coming over, She smiled so widely that her eyes could not be seen. Because the fried salty spring rolls were among the snacks prepared today, many servant girls and old maids who went out to serve in the tea room were rewarded. Of course, the nanny in charge was also rewarded. Moreover, old madam had specially rewarded them in the tea room just now. This kind of good thing was the fifth Miss's idea. At this time, seeing Xiao Wanru, she certainly flattered her more. Fifth Miss, you haven't eaten yet, right? There is nothing else here. You can go by yourself. The nanny in charge said with a smile. Xiao Wanru looked around and found that there was nothing else for her to do. She nodded at once, turned around and went out to find a place for lunch. After lunch, some people had already left. This time, old madam called all her granddaughters to her side to help her see off the guests. Among the 3 granddaughters, Xiao Wanru received the most praise. Even if they didn't praise Ru and great elder princess's mansion behind Xiao Wanru, they had to praise Prince Chen's mansion. Many people had wondered why the Empress Dowager would choose the 5th Miss of Duke Xing's mansion for her favorite Prince Chen. Now that they saw her in person, they had to sigh that the Empress Dowager was right to choose such a delicate beauty. Of course, everyone tacitly understood that there must be Ru and great elder princess's intention in it. Otherwise, the 5th Miss of Duke Xing's mansion was not worthy of Prince Chen. However, in terms of appearance, several old madams who had seen Chu Luchen all felt that if the two of them stood together now, they would definitely be an extremely beautiful couple. Therefore, everyone praised Xiao Wanru a lot in these aspects, from her appearance to her filial piety to the new tricks she thought of today. They almost praised Xiao Wanru to the point that she was like a flower. Every time at this time, Xiao Wanru would lower her head shyly, looking like a little girl who didn't know how to behave at all. She was very obedient, which made all the old madams nod repeatedly. It was said that old madam was good at training people. Look, 5th Miss Xiao was so lovely. Old madam accepted all these praises. Most of the womenfolk left after lunch, and only some close ones would stay for dinner. However, there were few people in the afternoon, and there was nothing to do in the tea room. Xiao Wanru even took time to come back to her courtyard to rest for a while before going out. As soon as she sat down in the courtyard of the tea room, she saw an old maid rush in. Seeing Xiao Wanru, she breathed a sigh of relief and said anxiously, 5th Miss, go and have a look. Something has happened. What's the matter? Xiao Wanru asked in surprise. Even if something had happened, they should look for old madam and the 3rd madam instead of her. It's Prince Chen. Something has happened. The old maid took a few more breaths and said, Old madam asked me to come to you and ask you to go and have a look. Xiao Wanru suddenly narrowed her eyes and said with a cold look, What do you mean by something has happened to Prince Chen? Why did Prince Chen have an accident in our mansion? Yu Jia also hurriedly said. The old maid wiped her sweat with her hand and felt anxious, but she had to make it clear. In fact, it was not Chu Luchen who had an accident, but Chu Liuzhou and Chu Luiwei who had an accident. Coincidentally, it had something to do with Xiao Wanru. After hearing the old maid's words, Xiao Wanru couldn't sit still anymore. She followed the old maid to the outer courtyard with Yu Jia. There was a fight in the outer courtyard, and it was related to Prince Chen and Prince Zhou. The other 2 princes seemed to be involved. It was a big deal. In a men's resting place in the outer courtyard, it was noisy, but only in the courtyard. There were guards outside the courtyard to prevent anyone from coming in. As soon as Xiao Wanru came over, she was stopped from a distance. Go and report to old madam that I'm here. Xiao Wanru stopped and said slowly to the person who blocked the way. The person who blocked the way nodded and hurriedly went to report to old madam. After the accident, old madam and Xiao Jing had come over. It was they who had cordoned off the entire courtyard and prevented anyone else from coming over. Today was a big day for Duke Xing's mansion. There were not only servants of Duke Xing's mansion in the mansion, but also servants of other mansions. It was easy for bad rumors to spread. Xiao Wanru didn't wait long outside. She saw an old maid beside old madam come over and lead her in. She didn't go to the main room first. There seemed to be a lot of people in the main room, and it was noisy and noisy. In the wing room, old madam sat there with a sullen face. When she saw Xiao Wanru come in, she pointed to one side and motioned for her to sit down. The atmosphere in the room was very dull. After Xiao Wanru bowed, she sat down and waited quietly for old madam to speak. Old madam called her over in such a hurry, of course, not just to let her come to watch the fun. She heard the noise in the main room, and it should be the noise that old madam couldn't suppress. "Fifth miss, can you go and ask Prince Jin to come out?" Hearing that the noise in the room suddenly became noisy again, old madam couldn't help but raise her eyebrows a few times. She reached out and rubbed her eyebrows. It was originally a good thing, but it was about to become a disaster. Old madam was very annoyed. Chapter 851. Originally, Xiao Huan couldn't invite Chu Luchen, the son of the emperor, to his marriage. But because Xiao Wanru was going to marry Prince Jin soon, it was reasonable for Prince Jin to come and greet him. Unexpectedly, Prince Jin not only came in person, but also brought several of his brothers. The scene in front immediately became serious. It was a good thing, and it could be regarded as Prince Chen's support for his future princess. Duke Xing's mansion was also happy to see it. They invited these princes into the banquet. In order to avoid being disturbed, they specially found a quiet place for them and held a private banquet. Xiao Jing accompanied them in person. After Xiao Hua toasted outside, he also came here to toast to thank them. Chu Luchen was in poor health, so no one dared to persuade him to drink. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou naturally drank with Xiao Jing. They were originally fine, but when Xiao Huan came over, they somehow made a scene. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou seemed to be unwilling to accept each other. They actually left Xiao Huan, the groom, and competed with each other in drinking. In the end, they got drunk and even fought with each other. When the son of the emperor and the grandson of the emperor fought, the people next to them didn't dare to watch. However, it was not easy to separate them, so they also led their servants to fight. The inner courtyard was in a mess. The only one who could stop them, Prince Chen, sat far away and didn't intend to go forward to stop them. Although everyone knew that he couldn't go forward with his poor health, if he was accidentally hit by them and his body couldn't bear it, it would be a big trouble. But at this time, there was no one in charge. Duke Xing's mansion could only think of Prince Chen. However, the people sent by Duke Xing's mansion couldn't reach Prince Chen. The people of Prince Yu's mansion and Prince Zhou's mansion fought with each other. The people brought by Prince Chen blocked the circle for fear that they would hurt Prince Chen. Prince Chen sat in the circle safely. Old madam had no choice but to think of Xiao Wanru. She wanted Xiao Wanru to send someone to tell Chu Luchen and ask him to separate the two sides. Old madam did not forget that Prince Chen came in person when they sent the betrothal gifts, which meant that Prince Chen valued Xiao Wanru. No matter whether it was because of Xiao Wanru or the Empress Dowager, at least it could be used at this time. Old madam was desperate at this time. "Grandma, I'm afraid it's impossible to ask Prince Chen to come here, but it should be possible to send a message." Xiao Wanru hesitated for a moment and said. It could be seen that she was not sure. However, this was also reasonable. After all, she had not married into Prince Chen's mansion yet and did not know much about Prince Chen's mind. Old madam thought for a while and gave in. "Go and send a message for me. Ask Prince Chen to find a way to stop Prince Yu and Prince Zhou. Duke Xing's mansion must be very grateful." At this point, old madam only hoped that this matter could be covered up a little. The guests outside were still there, but it had become like this inside. If it was spread out, not only the dignity of the royal family would be lost, but also the entire Duke Xing's mansion would be implicated. Xiao Wanru was silent for a moment. She called Yu Jie and asked her to send the message. Yu Jie cautiously came to the door of the main room and poked her head in. In fact, the two princes in the main room had been separated by their own men, but they were still a little unconscious and still wanted to struggle. Chu Luchen leisurely held the teacup in his hand, and his eyes were as calm as water. He lowered his head, as if he did not hear the noise around him. He was very calm. "Master, Yu Jie is coming." Xiao Xuanzi stood beside him and suddenly saw the servant girl poking her head out of the door. "Call her over," Chu Luchen said. Xiao Xuanzi answered, got out of the crowd, and brought Yu Jie over. Yu Jie stepped forward to salute and told Chu Luchen what old madam had said. A trace of evil flashed in Chu Liuchen's eyes. He patted his wide sleeves and stood up. It was the right time. Seeing that he got up and was about to walk out of the crowd, Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly followed him and asked other people of Prince Chen's mansion to follow him. The two groups of people were still quarreling because of the fight between the two masters, and Chu Liuchen's men intervened forcefully. Chu Luiwei and Chu Liuzhou still wanted to make trouble. Both of them were drunk, and their faces and necks were red. They struggled to get rid of the pull of their men. "Pull the two masters away," Chu Luchen said coldly with a gloomy look in his eyes. "If anyone can't even pull his master away, he doesn't want his life." His words scared the people who followed Prince Yu and Prince Zhou and made them tremble. They didn't dare to pull the two masters hard at first, but now they held them tightly with their hands and didn't dare to let go, for fear of provoking Prince Qin in front of them. How could those who often walked in the palace not know that this master was not as handsome and gentle as he looked? When he got angry, no one could stop him. "Hurry up and take them away. Do you want the two princes to beat our master?" Xiao Xuanzi shouted and glared at the two groups of people fiercely. The two groups of people immediately came to their senses and hurriedly pulled their masters back. If they really hit this master and something happened, no one present would be able to get away with it. They didn't dare to use force at first, but now they used all their strength. They pulled their masters back to a chair, but the two masters still glared at each other, as if they would pounce on each other if they couldn't pull them back. They were obviously not sober. The best way was to pour cold water on their heads and faces to make them sober. But no one dared to do that because of the status of these two masters. "Send 2 cups of cold water to the two princes. The older, the better." Chu Luchen looked at Xiao Jing and Xiao Hua, and who were standing aside, and said lightly, "Xiao Hua," and immediately reacted and hurriedly turned around to give the order. After a while, a servant brought 2 cups of water to the two princes. "Drink it," Chu Luchen said coldly. His handsome face revealed a gloomy look, which was so cold that no one dared to approach him. His strong momentum made the people on both sides hesitated, but they still did as he said. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were forced to drink more than half a cup of water. After struggling for a while, they pushed away the people who were pressing them, took a few steps back and covered their mouths with their hands. Prince Yu couldn't bear it first, and the servants hurriedly helped him to vomit. Prince Zhou didn't last long and was also helped to the side. Seeing the messy room, Xiao Jing hurriedly asked people to tidy it up. "Your Highness, what should we do now?" Coming to Chu Luchen, Xiao Jing's face was full of worry. This matter couldn't be hidden any longer, and the Imperial Palace would definitely get the news. "Duke Xing, why don't you find out why this happened?" Chu Luchen asked coldly. Xiao Jing was stunned and didn't react for a moment. He looked at Chu Luchen in astonishment and didn't understand what he meant. Eldest brother and second brother have always been self-disciplined. How could they lose control like this? "Duke Xing, you'd better find out the reason, in case you have nothing to answer when my uncle asks." Chu Luchen walked out. The room smelled a little too bad, and it was really not a good place to walk. "Prepare a flower hall and help Prince Yu and Prince Zhou there." "Your Highness, it's in the yard next door." "It's already prepared." Xiao Jing was stunned and said hurriedly. The room was full of smells, and it was indeed not a good place to talk. Xiao Jing asked Xiao Hua, and to lead Chu Luchen away first. After standing in the corridor for a while, Xiao Jing hurried to the wing room next door to report to Old Madam. It was a mess here just now, so it was not convenient for Old Madam to come over. In the wing room, Old Madam and Xiao Wanru were listening to the news. Yujie had come back to report to them, and she also saw from the window that the two princes were helped out. But Yujie couldn't tell the details. "How is it going?" Old Madam looked anxious. Seeing Xiao Jing come in, she hurriedly asked. "The two princes should wake up." Xiao Jing couldn't figure out the meaning of this, so he could only say. He frowned hard, and he hadn't come to his senses yet. The two princes, who had always been handsome in front of others, were fighting. Moreover, they were fighting like this. He saw that the two of them had hurt their faces just now. What the hell is going on? Why did the two princes fight? Old Madam patted the table hard and said angrily. Duke Xing's mansion had to come up with a regulation on this matter. When the emperor asked about it, They could have an explanation. Just now, Prince Chen said. Speaking of this, Xiao Jing glanced at his niece beside him. Seeing that she was just sitting with her head down, he turned his eyes back and said, "He asked us to check if there was anything unusual at the banquet. He said that the two princes are self-disciplined people and shouldn't lose their composure like this." Xiao Jing felt a headache and annoyed. He didn't want to get involved in the affairs of Prince Yu and Prince Zhou now. His eldest daughter's plan had failed. At this time, he shouldn't get close to the two princes. Because his son was getting married, he just sent an invitation according to the etiquette and did nothing else. But he didn't expect that the two princes would really come. Since they were here, he had to receive them. What was more unexpected was that the two princes, who had always been very dignified in front of others, would lose their composure like this. "Then go and check it out." Old Madam gritted her teeth and said, But this, how is it possible?" Xiao Jing looked at Old Madam with his eyes wide open in disbelief. Did it mean that it really had something to do with his mansion? "Since it's impossible, we have to check it out. If necessary, we can find someone," Old Madam said with gloomy eyes. After saying this, Old Madam paused for a moment, turned her eyes and glanced at Xiao Wanru. She took a deep breath and looked a little more gentle. "Fifth maid, you go back first. If there's anything, I'll call you later. You're tired. Go back to your courtyard and have a rest." Of course, she didn't want Xiao Wanru to be present. Xiao Wanru stood up sensibly, bowed deeply to Old Madam and Xiao Jing, and then left slowly with Yujia. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice, concealing the inexplicable deepness in her eyes. This pair of mother and son always gave her a very uncomfortable feeling. Now, she did not know what this pair of mother and son were plotting again. Chapter 852. Before Xiao Wanru entered Duke Xing's mansion, she saw that Madam of Duke Xing and Old Madam were in charge of the affairs of the inner court. However, Old Madam was old, so everything was handled by Madam of Duke Xing. Madam of Duke Xing was the master in the inner court of Duke Xing's mansion. She could tell that the third madam was plotted against by her. As for her second uncle, he was not an ordinary person. He not only knew about the affairs of the inner court, but also controlled the affairs of the outer court. He was also very respected in front of the emperor. But in fact, what she saw in front of her told her that Old Madam had never let go of the affairs of Duke Xing's mansion. Whenever there was something important, her second uncle would definitely come to discuss it with Old Madam. That was to say, as long as it was a big matter, Old Madam would intervene. After Madam of Duke Xing's mansion left, the reason why the third madam could control the affairs of the inner court of Duke Xing's mansion so quickly was because of Old Madam's support. That was to say, Old Madam seemed to be indifferent, but in fact she had been holding the power of Duke Xing's mansion tightly. The power was not only in the inner court but also in the outer court. Some decisions should be made by her. She clenched the handkerchief in her hand so tightly that she felt a tingling pain in her palm through the handkerchief. Then she slowly relaxed her hand, but the tingling pain was still there and slowly slid into her heart. Because of this speculation, the matter in her heart became heavier and heavier, and she became more and more furious. If this was really the case, Old Madam's mind could not be described as a snake or a scorpion. Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs, let alone a human. Walking out of the courtyard, she looked under the tree in front of her and saw Xiao Xuanzi looking around. Seeing them coming out, he hurriedly ran over with a smile. "Greetings, fifth miss," Xiao Xuanzi said with a smile and came up to salute respectfully. "What's the matter?" Xiao Wanru asked in surprise. "Shouldn't Xiao Xuanzi be with Chu Luchen at this time? Master asked me to ask fifth miss if you were in charge of anything today," Xiao Xuanzi asked with a smile. He looked very lively, which was completely different from his expression in front of Xiao Jing and Old Madam. "I was in charge of the tea room today and helped deal with some other things. It has nothing to do with the food and drinks." Xiao Wanru immediately understood what he meant. Her heart suddenly softened and she answered softly. Hearing Old Madam and Xiao Jing's words, she knew that if they insisted on blaming Duke Xing's mansion for this matter, Xing's mansion would send someone to deal with it. This person could not be Madame Dowager herself, Nor could it be Xiao Jing. Of course, it could not be Xiao Hu. Then, it was hard to say who else could it be. One thing was for sure, a mere slave wouldn't be able to do such a thing. No matter how shameless a slave was, he wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Xiao Wanru was in charge of the pantry. The problem was that she didn't prepare enough pastries. She only prepared sweet pastries that they all thought were good, but she didn't expect that some people didn't like this kind of sweetness or didn't like this kind of oversweet pastries. However, because of this, she didn't make the sweet spring rolls that she was supposed to help the kitchen make. All the food at the banquet had nothing to do with her. I did send some pastries here before, but your highnesses don't like sweet food, so they didn't work. Xiao Xuanzi immediately understood Xiao Wanru's meaning, rolled his eyes, and answered. The pastries were also sent over. There were two kinds of pastries. One smelled sweet, and the other was spring rolls with bean paste. The princes didn't like sweet food, so no one touched them. The reason why Xiao Xuanzi remembered it so clearly was that he also advised his master to eat some at that time, but his master didn't use it. He deliberately glanced at the other two masters and found that they didn't eat either. It could be seen that they didn't like it. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and understood Xiao Xuanzi's meaning. Xiao Xuanzi, thank you. Yu Jie was very clever and hurriedly thanked him. Don't thank me. If you want to thank me, thank me. I'm afraid that the fifth miss will be involved in it. Although nothing serious will happen with my master's protection, this kind of thing is not good. It may cause some gossip. Xiao Xuanzi cleverly put the blame on his master, smiled like a flower, and made a good impression in front of his future princess. What he said was to protect Xiao Wanru on behalf of Chu Luchen. Thank you, Your Highness. Xiao Wanru couldn't help smiling, slightly raised her lips, and said, Okay, I'll send the message right away. Xiao Xuanzi said happily. His master would definitely be happy after hearing this. After saying that, he bowed to Xiao Wanru and ran to another courtyard nearby. Seeing Xiao Xuanzi enter this courtyard, which should be the place to discuss the next thing, she rolled her watery eyes and walked slowly to the inner courtyard. The next thing was not something she could intervene in. Fortunately, Chu Luchen was here. As long as she thought of this, she felt at peace in her heart. She gently bit her lip and felt inexplicably at ease. She was no longer helpless and could only grit her teeth. Fifth sister, what happened? Xiao Taihuan hurried over and asked hurriedly when she saw Xiao Wanru. She had just got the news and rushed over. I heard that the two princes had a fight. Grandma asked me to find Prince Chen, Xiao Wanru said simply. Fight? How could it be? Xiao Taihuan's face changed dramatically and she asked nervously. I don't know the reason, maybe they drank too much? Xiao Wanru answered vaguely. She really couldn't answer this question. Grandma and second uncle are still talking about it inside, so they asked me to go back first. She pointed to the courtyard she had just come out of and said, Inside? Are they all inside? Xiao Taihuan said in a panic, looking very nervous. Grandma and second uncle are inside, and the others went to the other side. Xiao Wanru shook her head. Fifth sister, let's go in and listen, okay? Xiao Taihuan grabbed Xiao Wanru's sleeve nervously. Xiao Wanru really didn't expect this. She looked at Xiao Taihuan in astonishment. Old Madam and Xiao Jing had already said that obedient juniors should stay away at this time. How could she have such an idea? Xiao Taihuan didn't seem to be such a disobedient person in the past, but she was a little abnormal today. Seeming to notice Xiao Wanru's doubts, Xiao Taihuan hurriedly explained, Today's incident in the inner courtyard was organized by my mother. Grandma will definitely blame my mother for it. But what does it have to do with my mother? I didn't expect that the two princes were so bad at drinking that they couldn't drink more than a few cups. Didn't drink more than a few cups? How do you know, third sister? Xiao Wanru asked keenly, glancing at Xiao Taihuan's panicked eyes. I don't know. According to the people who came to report, how could they be so drunk? The two princes have always been in good health. Xiao Taihuan lowered her head. She seemed to be explaining, but also seemed to be talking to herself. She was very flustered. If they are not in good health, how many cups do they need? Xiao Wanru said thoughtfully. Xiao Taihuan suddenly raised her head, as if she had been greatly frightened. Her hand fell from Xiao Wanru's sleeve, and she could feel that her hand had trembled fiercely just now. Her expression was almost tense. "I don't know," she stammered. Then she saw Xiao Wanru frown slightly and her eyes become more and more confused. She hurriedly tried to remedy the situation and said with a dry smile, I'm afraid that this matter will affect my mother. You know, Grandma has always disliked my mother. Grandma likes second aunt the most. If something happens this time, maybe." Speaking of this, Xiao Zaihuan was really flustered. The implication was that she was afraid that old madam and Xiao Jing would blame it on the third madam. "Fifth sister, can you accompany me to listen to it?" "I can definitely explain it." Xiao Zaihuan looked at Xiao Wanru imploringly, and her eyes turned red with anxiety. "My mother really doesn't know anything. She has been in poor health. Since what happened 3 years ago, she has been in poor health. Now that second aunt is gone, she is just struggling to be the housekeeper. She can't control herself in many ways." Xiao Wanru looked at her extremely calmly and stepped aside. "Third sister, you can go in. Second uncle and grandma are inside. Fifth sister, I don't dare. Can you accompany me in?" Xiao Zaihuan didn't move her feet. She still looked at Xiao Wanru with tears in her eyes and said sadly, "Even if we don't go in, it's good for us to listen to them. We won't let grandma and second uncle find out. Grandma and second uncle have already let me out. If I go in again, it will be deliberately disobeying them. Third sister, you don't want me to disobey the 2 elders, do you? Third sister, you can go in by yourself. If grandma and second uncle ask about it later, I will say that I didn't tell you about it just now. They won't blame you and just take it as an accident." Xiao Wanru shook her head extremely calmly and said. He said this for Xiao Zaihuan's sake. Regardless of whether Xiao Zaihuan wanted to eavesdrop or rush in, it was better not to know than to do it knowingly. He could help her make a false certificate, which could be regarded as helping her. Xiao Zaihuan's face changed greatly, and her face suddenly became cold. She took a step back and hid the panic and fear in her eyes. She looked at Xiao Wanru coldly and said with disappointment, "Fifth sister, I really misjudged you. How can you be so cold-blooded and heartless? What kind of person do you think I am, third sister?" Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows. "I thought you were at least warm-hearted, gentle and good. Although you are not close to second aunt, it is also because second aunt has always wanted to frame you up. But my mother has always been very good to you, and I also want to be on good terms with you. Why are you so indifferent and don't want to help my mother when she is in trouble?" Xiao Zaihuan said angrily with tears in her eyes, which were about to fall down. She looked aggrieved and angry. Xiao Wanru's eyes became more and more deep. She turned her eyes, and a trace of coldness, which almost penetrated people's hearts, fell on Xiao Zaihuan. Xiao Zaihuan subconsciously took another step back, avoided Xiao Wanru's eyes, and inexplicably felt a little guilty. Chapter 853. Third sister, I want to say that you are wrong. I have never been a good person. Xiao Wanru said coldly. Xiao Zaihuan's words were stuck in her throat. She stared at Xiao Wanru in a daze and opened her mouth slightly, but couldn't say a word. It shouldn't be like this. Shouldn't Xiao Wanru explain and go in with her? Third sister, in fact, I am really not a good person, nor a stupid person, so, some smart aleck thinks, don't play tricks on me. It's a waste of energy. Grandma will definitely recommend someone this time. I don't know if it will be third aunt. It has nothing to do with me. Xiao Wanru raised the corners of her mouth slightly, but her eyes were still cold. The faint smile was not as deep as her eyes, which made people feel a little sarcastic. Xiao Zaihuan opened her mouth subconsciously and didn't know where to start. She could only watch Xiao Wanru leave. What should we do? The servant girl stammered. Let's go in. Xiao Zaihuan gritted her teeth and wiped the tears under the veil with a handkerchief. She was determined in her heart, but inexplicably felt guilty and scared. When did Xiao Wanru become so terrible? Why was she different from what she had imagined? Hadn't her fifth sister always been very good to her? She had always been respectful to her. Why was she different from what she had imagined? Her fifth sister shouldn't be like this. Did she know something? An idea suddenly appeared in her mind, which made her stop after a few steps and look at Xiao Wanru's back behind her in horror. After a while, Xiao Wanru had walked to the entrance of a moon cave in front of her and then slowly disappeared from her sight. Her fingers couldn't help trembling. When she was stiff just now, she didn't realize that her fingers were cold. At this time she felt a kind of chill. Xiao Wanru felt the same as she had thought. If it was true, Xiao Wanru would never be very good to her, let alone speak up for her so easily. Xiao Taihuan felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured on her head, which made her heart cold. Not only was her heart trembling, but her whole body was shaking uncontrollably, and her face was as pale as snow. Had she just been tricked? Taihuan. A doubtful voice came from behind. Xiao Taihuan turned around stiffly and saw Xiao Jing looking at her with displeasure. She hurriedly bowed and said, "Second uncle. Why you here?" Xiao Jing looked at his third niece and asked. It was obvious that he was in a bad mood because his eyebrows were still knitted tightly. "I heard that something happened here, so my mother asked me to come and have a look. She is not in good health, so she went to lie down for a while." Xiao Taihuan quickly calmed down and explained. "Your grandmother is inside. Go back with her. You can't interfere in this matter," Xiao Jing said coldly. After that he ignored Xiao Taihuan and turned to the side yard. Xiao Taihuan stood stiffly at the door for a while before walking in. Now she could only take one step at a time. She had to see her grandmother first. Besides, few people knew about this matter, so it was impossible for her to be the one who had done it. The fight between the two princes was not kept a secret after all. It slowly spread to the guests outside, and the guests who had not left immediately talked about it. Now only the third master of Duke Xing's mansion was greeting the guests outside, and the other masters were nowhere to be seen. This made the guests outside more and more certain that this matter was true. Some people went to talk to the third master Xiao about this matter, but the third master Xiao really didn't know anything. He even waved his hand generously and said that it was impossible. How could such a thing happen? Seeing that he said it casually, everyone was dubious. But at this time, someone saw the appearance of Prince Yu and Prince Zhou when they left. The two princes' faces were bruised and swollen, and their clothes were messy and torn. At a glance, it was obvious that they had fought. Moreover, the two princes had cold faces all the way. Although they came out together, they didn't look at each other. There was really something wrong here. After the two princes left, the others saw Duke Xing, who had arrived late, and the first young master, who had gotten married today. Although the two of them spoke gently, their expressions were very stiff. It was obvious that something had happened at a glance. Everyone sensibly said goodbye and left one by one, leaving only some close friends who were still waiting for the dinner in the evening. After entrusting these close friends to his third brother, Xiao Jing took Xiao Hua and to Old Madam's Chuntang courtyard. Old Madam had helped to investigate the matter in the inner courtyard before, so they went there to ask if Old Madam had found anything. As for the bridal chamber, Xiao Hua and also asked someone to tell the new madam that he had something important to do here and would go to see her later. When the father and son came over, Old Madam was sitting in the room with a cold face. Beside her, the third madam lowered her head slightly and didn't dare to breathe too much. She looked very nervous. She was in poor health, and now she was even paler than before, almost as thin as a piece of paper. Xiao Taihuan stood behind her mother with her head lowered, so that no one could see the expression on her face. "Mother, how is the investigation going? Does this matter have anything to do with our mansion?" After bowing to Old Madam, Xiao Jing sat down on one side and immediately asked anxiously. Xiao En looked at Old Madam, whose face was as pale as a piece of paper, and also sat down on the other side of Xiao Jing. "You are all vile creatures." Old Madam patted the table heavily. The third madam couldn't sit still anymore. She knelt down with a plop, covered her face and cried, "Mother, it's all my fault. I'm in poor health, so I used to be a little lax. Although I assigned some things to the third miss and the fifth miss this time, I was still a little tired, so I took a break for a while. I didn't expect such a mess to happen." Vile creature, vile creature. Old Madam patted the armrest of the chair loudly, flustered and exasperated. Mother, do you mean that this matter really has something to do with our mansion? Xiao Jing looked at his sister-in-law, who was kneeling on the ground, and then looked at Old Madam, asking with a cold face. Originally, even if this matter had nothing to do with his mansion, he would still be reprimanded by the emperor. If it really had something to do with his mansion, the emperor would punish him severely. Xiao Jing couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He looked at the third madam, who was kneeling on the ground, with more anger. This matter does have something to do with it. Old Madam said angrily, it's said that someone sent a pot of medicinal wine for the princes to drink. The medicinal effect is not very strong. In fact, it's not a particularly strong wine. It has some tonic ingredients. The steward of the mansion went to tell her. She also thought it was good, so she sent it. Sent medicinal wine and tonics? Xiao Jing's face changed greatly. He stared at the kneeling third madam in astonishment and said sternly, "What the hell is going on? Who wants to hurt Prince Qin?" Since it was medicinal wine, ordinary people would just drink it. Even if they were a little drunk, it would be nothing. However, Prince Qin was not included. If he drank a little, no one knew what would happen. If he vomited blood on the spot or his life was in danger, the whole Duke Xing's mansion would have to be buried with him. Xiao Jing was not stupid. He immediately thought of Prince Qin, who came with them today. Moreover, Prince Qin was the most likely one to come. Last time, when he sent the betrothal gifts, Prince Qin came to show that he valued Xiao Wanru. If there was a happy occasion in Duke Xing's mansion, he was very likely to come here to support the situation. Second uncle, I didn't know that Prince Qin would also come. The steward said that since the princes were coming, could we prepare better wine? Medicinal wine would also be fine. I agreed and sent the medicinal wine that was treasured in the mansion. I thought that it was not a big deal. Besides, this medicinal wine was not very strong. Even I could drink a cup occasionally in the past. The third madam cried and explained. Old Madam pointed at the third madam angrily and said angrily, "Can you compare with Prince Qin? Your body can stand it, but it doesn't mean that Prince Qin can stand it. Fortunately, Prince Qin is fine this time, otherwise. Old Madam shivered all over and sweated heavily when she thought of the consequences. The current situation was already the best. Fortunately, Prince Qin was not a good drinker. Mother, uncle, I really didn't know it would be like this. The third madam cried. Old Madam was so angry that she couldn't speak. Xiao Jing looked at the kneeling third madam with cold eyes and disgust. Xiao Caihuan didn't dare to move at all. She only felt that her whole body was numb. The current situation was completely different from what she had imagined. How could it be like this? Why did it become like this? Xiao Huan coughed in a low voice and said, "Third aunt, get up first. Since this matter has happened, there should be a plan. Come on, help third aunt up. Third aunt is not in good health. She can't really kneel and hurt herself." An old maid looked at Old Madam's face and saw her nod slightly. She hurried over to help the third madam up and sit down in a chair aside. "Grandmother, we can't hide this matter now." Xiao Huan looked at Old Madam sitting in the first seat and said, "Then what should we do?" Old Madam said angrily. Even though she had experienced many storms, she felt that the current situation was more dangerous than this. She didn't like the daughter-in-law of the third branch, and now she didn't like her at all. Sure enough, she was not as reliable as her grandson's daughter-in-law. It seemed that the affairs of the inner courtyard had to be managed by someone else. "Grandmother, let's tell the truth." Third aunt promised and the steward went to do it. It should be easy to find out along the way. If we deal with this group of people, it will arouse the emperor's anger. It's better to gather these people together and wait for the emperor's people to come. Then we'll send them together and let the emperor investigate. Xiao Huan thought for a while and said, if they didn't deal with this matter in this way, there was no better way to deal with it. Old Madam and Xiao Jing nodded repeatedly at his words. They looked at each other and also felt that this was the best way to deal with the matter. They couldn't let the emperor suspect Duke Xing's mansion, so Duke Xing's mansion didn't do anything now and just waited for the follow-up. "No, you can't do this. Grandmother, you can't do this. Chapter 854. Xiao Taihuan clenched the handkerchief in her hands tightly, suppressed the panic in her heart, and said anxiously. Xiao Jing frowned and ignored her. Madame Dowager's face darkened and she was about to get angry. Xiao Hualuan was calm. He looked at Xiao Taihuan and asked, "Why did you say that, third sister? Is there something else that you can't let others know?" "What's the matter, third girl?" Madame Dowager also heard something and said sternly. Xiao Taihuan's hands trembled, and then her whole body trembled. She managed to restrain the panic in her heart and gritted her teeth, saying, "Grandma, if the servants implicate Mother in this matter, how will she deal with it?" Xiao Taihuan said and cried, "Grandma, Mother didn't want to take care of the affairs of the mansion. You know that she is in poor health. Even if she could take care of it, she couldn't. If you didn't ask Mother to take care of it again and again, Mother would just recuperate. How could such a thing happen?" Hearing her daughter's words, the third madam thought that she really didn't want to take care of it at that time. Now the disaster made her feel that it was not in vain. She lowered her head and wiped her tears with her handkerchief. She did refuse several times at that time. Although the reason was not that she didn't want to take care of the family, she just wanted to be pretentious. But now she felt that she didn't want to take care of the family at that time, and Madame Dowager forced her to take care of it. The more she thought about it, the more she felt wronged and felt that she had suffered an inexplicable disaster. How could such a thing happen when she was recuperating in the house? 3 years ago, after I was hit by a car, I didn't recover completely. My body has long been ruined. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no one in the food to take care of me, I wouldn't interfere in the family affairs. Mother, I would rather die like this 3 years ago. At least I can have a good ending." The third madam sobbed. Xiao Taihuan turned back and hugged her, crying with her. The mother and daughter cried, and everyone in the room frowned. Xiao, needless to say, was happy. Today was his big day, but the mother and daughter were crying like they were at a funeral. If it weren't for his good self-restraint, he would have fallen out with her. Both Xiao Jing and old madam didn't look good. The reason why the third madam was injured in the accident 3 years ago was because of Madame Zhang's scheme. From this point of view, the second branch owed the third branch. Sister-in-law, niece's marriage has already been discussed. Xiao Jing couldn't help coughing, reminding third madam not to forget that he had promised to let Xiao Taihuan marry Xiao Jie, as compensation to the third branch. The third madam stopped crying and turned her head to look at her daughter. Although her face was covered with a gauze, her eyes were red and swollen from crying. At this moment, she became more and more sad. "Mother, second uncle, if you really want me to take responsibility for this, I will take responsibility. But everyone knows that I am sick. Even if someone wants to hurt Prince Qin, he must have inquired about this." For the sake of her daughter's marriage, the third madam had to give in, but she also left herself a way out. Everyone in the mansion knew that she was in poor health, and they also knew that it was impossible for her to manage everything. Many things had to be handled by her people, and then reported to her in the end. Today's wedding banquet was not over, and some things had not been reported to her, so she was completely unaware of it. This was indeed a fact. If it weren't for her daughter, she wouldn't even know that such a disaster had happened in the mansion. "Mother!" Xiao Taihuan cried, and her tears wetted the gauze in front of her. "Well, you two can go back first. We will definitely investigate this matter, but the emperor has to give the order. Our mansion can't make the decision, and I can't promise you that there's nothing wrong with it." Xiao Jing waved his hand impatiently and became more and more annoyed in his heart. There were so many things to do, and he didn't want to see the mother and daughter being so depressed anymore. Old madam nodded and didn't want the third madam to stay here anymore. It was really not a good thing for her to spoil things. Xiao Taihuan still wanted to say something, but old madam's servants had unquestionably helped the third madam up, so she had to follow them out. When they arrived at the third madam's courtyard, old madam's servants left. The third madam waved her hand, and other servant girls and old maids also followed her out, leaving only the third madam and Xiao Taihuan in the room. "Tell me, what's going on?" The third madam wiped away her tears, looked at Xiao Zaihuan with red eyes, and said seriously. She was in poor health, but it didn't mean that she was really stupid. Mother. Xiao Zaihuan murmured, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know? Well, you still intend to hide it from me at this time. Do you know that if something really happens to Prince Qin, the whole Duke Xing's mansion may be buried with him? The third madam was furious and said angrily. She was in poor health, so most of the arrangements were done by Xiao Zaihuan. It was not that she wanted to let Xiao Zaihuan deal with this matter, but that Xiao Zaihuan took the initiative to say that she wanted to learn to be a housekeeper. On the one hand, she could take good care of her health, and on the other hand, she wanted to practice. Thinking that she would enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion in the future, if she could learn to be a housekeeper, her status in Commandery Prince Qing's mansion might be higher, and she might even become Commandery Prince Qing's princess because of Duke Xing's mansion. The third madam let her do it. She asked her and Xiao Wanru to help, but in fact, the focus was on Xiao Zaihuan. Now such a big mistake had been made. Others didn't know it, but the third madam knew it. If someone had done something, the first possibility was Xiao Zaihuan. Moreover, her expression just now was very abnormal. The reason why the third madam softened and admitted it was also because of Xiao Zaihuan. There were no outsiders here, so the third madam should ask clearly. Mother. Xiao Zaihuan stammered. If you don't want to annoy me to death, tell me the truth. The third madam patted the armrest of the chair heavily and said painfully. Her words were so serious that Xiao Zaihuan couldn't stand it anymore. She knelt down with a plop and walked a few steps on her knees to the third madam. She put her hands on the third madam's knees and said sadly, Mother. As soon as she cried, her tears fell uncontrollably again. She cried and said, Mother, I don't want to enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. If I have to enter a prince's mansion, I would like to enter Prince Chen's mansion and serve Prince Chen with my fifth sister. She had been holding these words in her heart for a period of time. At this time, she said it in front of the third madam. After saying it, she burst into tears and cried uncontrollably. The third madam was stunned and looked at Xiao Zaihuan in horror. Her lips trembled twice, and she couldn't breathe. She covered her chest hard. Seeing that the situation was not good, Xiao Zaihuan hurriedly stood up, cried and patted the third madam's back, and said anxiously, Mother, don't worry. Calm down first. The third madam finally recovered. When she did, she slapped Xiao Zaihuan hard, which made Xiao Zaihuan take a few steps back and almost fall. Mother. Xiao Zaihuan looked at the third madam with tears in her eyes. Are you going to annoy me to death? Is it so easy to enter Prince Chen's mansion? Don't you want to enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion? It was your father who went to your second uncle to ask for the marriage. Otherwise, do you think Commandery Prince Qing's mansion would be willing to let you enter? Who would want to marry you when you look like this? Commandery Prince Qing may not be willing to marry you, but Prince Chen will. The third madam was so angry that she almost fainted. She never knew that her daughter had such a delusion, let alone that her daughter intended to make this delusion a reality. Who is Prince Chen? How could he be the same as Commandery Prince Qing? He was the beloved person of the Empress Dowager and the Emperor, so how could he be plotted against? Mother, as long as I serve Prince Chen well, he will be willing. Besides, I don't want to be his wife, and fifth sister is his wife. Fifth sister has a good temper and has always been good to me. If the two of us are together, wouldn't it be better? Prince Chen has a noble status, and it's impossible for fifth sister to be his wife. Since there are others, why can't it be me? At least fifth sister and I are of one mind. Xiao Zaihuan cried. The third madam took a deep breath, suppressed the blood rolling in her heart, and then asked slowly, When did you have this idea? I saw Prince Chen give fifth sister a betrothal gift. Xiao Zaihuan wiped away her tears and told the truth. Since she had told the beginning, the next step was much simpler. You actually liked Prince Chen from that time. Why didn't you tell me? The third madam said exasperatedly. She really wanted to knock her daughter's head open to see what she was thinking. If Prince Chen could have his own way, even if he was weak, he would have been taken away long ago, and Xiao Wanru wouldn't have had a chance. Moreover, Prince Chen gave Xiao Wanru a betrothal gift in person. Although he didn't like Xiao Wanru, it could be seen that he didn't dislike Xiao Wanru, or even liked her a little. Which other woman had such a status? Mother, I dare not say. I really dare not say. Xiao Caihuan cried loudly and could hardly speak clearly. She really didn't dare to say it. She could only secretly please Xiao Wanru and wanted Xiao Wanru to say it. She even thought about promising Xiao Wanru that after they entered Prince Chen's mansion, she would not fight for anything. She just wanted to quietly stay by Prince Chen's side and help Xiao Wanru fight for Prince Chen's favor when she needed help. As a sister and the daughter of the lineal descent, she compromised so much and thought so much for her fifth sister. Xiao Caihuan felt that she was not wrong. But even so, she still didn't dare to tell the third madam. Seeing that her daughter was still so stubborn, the third madam stopped beating around the bush. She wiped her tears with a handkerchief and said with a cold face, "Now tell me the truth. Who gave you this idea behind the scenes? Who wants to secretly harm our third branch and let us die with you? Is it your fifth sister?" Chapter 855. Speaking of this, the third madam's face darkened. How could her daughter not understand that the most she could do was to please Xiao Wanru? A while ago, she had said that it was strange that Xiao Caihuan would go to the Piaoyun courtyard whenever she had time. She had wondered why Xiao Caihuan was so close to Xiao Wanru, but she didn't expect that it was because of such a reason. This could explain why Xiao Caihuan always showed weakness to Xiao Wanru. Thinking that her daughter, who was also a charming daughter of legal wife, actually had such a bad idea and tried to please her cousin, the third madam felt both heartache and sadness. If nothing had happened in the Imperial palace at that time, how could her daughter want to be someone else's concubine? Even if Xiao Caihuan was the prince's concubine, the third madam was not willing to do so. Her daughter was the daughter of legal wife, so she should be the legal wife, not the concubine who tried to please other women. "Mother," Xiao Caihuan murmured. "You still don't say it at this time. Do you want to protect that person and let your parents and sisters block the trouble for the person you want to protect?" The third madam became more and more angry. "Mother, it's not like that. It's not like that. I wanted to tell you about it, but when I came to tell you that day, I met sister-in-law." Xiao Caihuan cried and didn't dare to hide it anymore. She didn't want to say it because she didn't have any evidence. She just said it. After she was ignored by Prince Chen that day, she wanted to tell the third madam and ask the third madam to help her. Unexpectedly, she met a servant girl of Minister Zhao's mansion, or to be more precise, Zhao Shiran's servant girl, who asked her out at night, said that she had something important to discuss with her and said that she could solve the problem she wanted to solve the most at present. Xiao Caihuan was dubious. Later, she thought that Zhao Shiran was about to enter Duke Xing's mansion and become her sister-in-law, so it was impossible for him to harm her. With a dubious attitude, she went out at night. The housekeeper was the third madam, so no one dared to stop Xiao Caihuan from going out. After she met up with Zhao Shiran, the two of them did not talk about anything else. Zhao Shiran even tried to persuade her, saying that he had seen through her thoughts before. She told her not to covet Prince Chen. She said that a man like Prince Chen was not easy to get. There were so many young ladies in the capital, and many of them didn't care about Prince Chen's health. Who could get Prince Chen's attention? Of course, on the other hand, it also meant that Prince Chen's mansion was clean. In the future, Xiao Wanru would be blessed to marry into it. Even if there were one or two more concubines, it would be cleaner and blessed than other mansions. Every mansion had 3 or 4 concubines. They looked beautiful, but in fact they were suffering inside. Xiao Caihuan already had feelings for Prince Chen. After listening to Zhao Shiran's advice, she became more and more interested in him. As a woman, how could she not want her sweetheart to have no other women by his side? It was impossible to have a princess consort, but it would be great if she was the only one. Therefore, Xiao Caihuan was not persuaded, but her desire was ignited. After that, Zhao Shiran did not ask more about it. Instead, he asked about his marriage. When there was no one else around, Zhao Shiran had always been very graceful. Now that he talked about his marriage, he seemed to be very natural. Knowing that the third madam was in charge of Duke Xing's mansion now, he specially thanked Xiao Zihuan. Moreover, he also told Xiao Zihuan not to have such thoughts. If something really happened in the marriage with Prince Qin, the third madam would be embarrassed. He also said that Prince Qin was not in good health and should not be persuaded to drink. Others might not get drunk, but Prince Qin must get drunk. If something happened at that time, it would be bad for everyone. These words sounded reasonable, and they were indeed from the perspective of the third madam. But in Xiao Zihuan's ears, it became another meaning. Prince Qin could not drink. Others could, but she could not. If Prince Qin was drunk, she could serve him. If something really happened at that time, Prince Qin would have to give her an explanation. After all, she was also the daughter of the lineal descent of Duke Xing's mansion. Moreover, she was only going to take care of Prince Qin. What would happen later was out of her control. Even if Xiao Wanru did not want to agree, she had to agree. With such a beautiful idea, Xiao Zihuan returned to Duke Xing's mansion. That night, she did not sleep well. She tossed and turned, thinking about this matter. The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. If she really succeeded, she would become Prince Chen's woman. At least, she would be a concubine. After all, she was right. There was nothing wrong with helping her mother take care of distinguished guests. It was just a freak accident. This was also the reason why she secretly asked the third madam to send the wine. She only said that noble guests should naturally send noble wine, and she did not say that Prince Qin was also here. If she knew that Prince Qin was also here, her mother must have scruples. Everyone knew what Prince Qin was like, so no one dared to send wine at random. After hearing Xiao Zihuan's words, the third madam was so angry that her face turned blue and white. She had been with Madam of Duke Xing, Madame Jiang, for so many years. Although she was a little weaker, she could still turn the tables according to what had happened 3 years ago. It could be seen that she was not a bad person. Hearing Xiao Zihuan's words, how could she not understand what Zhao Xiran meant? She was so angry that she wanted to rush to the bridal chamber and ask Zhao Xiran what she meant. She, a new bride, dared to plot against the third branch. What did she mean? But there was no evidence except for Xiao Zihuan's words. Moreover, every word and sentence she said was comforting words, which seemed to be justifiable. "Oh, you stupid, why are you so stupid?" The third madam stretched out her finger and pointed hard at Xiao Zihuan's forehead, scolding, "Why do you think she will do it out of kindness? If something really happens, even if Duke Xing's mansion is fine, our third branch must be in trouble. The second branch will not protect us, nor will old madam." Speaking of this, the third madam felt aggrieved. She had been ignored for so many years after marrying into Duke Xing's mansion. Moreover, she had a pair of daughters and had no children, so she became more and more disgraced in front of old madam. It was not easy for her to get to this point and have a little foundation, but such a thing happened because of her daughter. Mother, what should we do now? What should we do?" Xiao Tuan also knew that it was a disaster at this time and said, trembling all over, "Did you put something in the wine?" The third madam calmed down. It was not the time to blame Zhao Xiran, so she could only force herself to ask, "Mother, I didn't do anything. I just asked someone to send wine. I dare not do anything else." Xiao Zihuan cried. Her original intention was to get Prince Qin drunk and then make some trouble with the excuse of visiting him. This matter would be settled. If she really asked her to put something in the wine, she would not dare to do it. After all, there were 2 other princes. The third madam breathed a sigh of relief. Her daughter was not so stupid. Otherwise, the third branch would definitely not be able to escape this time. Then there was at least room for redemption. The 2 Wangye won't fight for no reason. They must have been poisoned. Since you didn't do it, it's the best. Zhao Xiran was the one who asked you to do it. If anyone knows about it, it must be Zhao Xiran. But it's useless even if you tell them that it might be Zhao Xiran. The third madam calmly analyzed. Mother, then what should we do? After being frightened, Xiao Zihuan was at a loss. Go to your 5th sister and make it clear. The third madam exhaled heavily and made up her mind. It was impossible for old madam to help her daughter. It was said that she also valued this granddaughter-in-law very much. At this time, She would not listen to anything she said, so it was better not to say anything. At this time, the third madam wished that Zhao Shiran was dead. This woman had just married into the family for a day, and so many things had happened. It was definitely not a good thing. She could not get Zhao Shiran involved in Xiao Zaihuan's matter, but she could do other things. The third branch was not so easy to bully. The third madam secretly hated Zhao Shiran. After Xiao Zaihuan's matter was settled, she would teach Zhao Shiran a lesson. After all, the eldest lineal grandson was not the heir of Duke Xing's mansion, and it was uncertain who would become the heir of Duke Xing's mansion. At this time, she took on the heirs of the future heir of Duke Xing's mansion and intervened in the affairs of the mansion. She was just a new daughter-in-law. Did she really think that she was madam of Duke Xing's mansion? Mother, I don't want to go. I don't know what to say. Xiao Zaihuan was ashamed and cried. You don't know what to say, but you know what to do? If you don't say it, wait for the second branch to push the blame on your father and me. At that time, your father and I will take the blame, and there will only be you and your sister left in this mansion. Who else in this mansion will treat you as the master? The third madam had to use a heavy dose of medicine and scolded her sternly. Xiao Zaihuan trembled all over, and tears fell from her eyes like rain. She could not bear the consequences and did not dare to bear it. If something really happened to her parents, she could only apologize with her death. At that time, her family would be broken, and there would be no future. Mother, I'll go to fifth sister. Xiao Zaihuan had to agree. Go to your fifth sister and tell her the cause and effect of this matter. You should tell her what Zhao Shiran said more clearly. As for your own delusion, you must repent. You can't hide it, and you can't think about Prince Chen in the future. Otherwise, not only Prince Chen will not spare you, but also your fifth sister will not forgive you. The third madam knew better than her daughter that the youngest and the latest girl to enter Duke Xing's mansion was by no means an ordinary girl. If she was really just an ordinary girl from an aristocratic family, she would have been killed by Madam of the Jiang family before she entered the mansion. How could she have entered Duke Xing's mansion? Not only did she enter Duke Xing's mansion, but Madam of the Jiang family was also defeated to such a degree. If it was all an accident, the third madam really did not believe it. She had always wanted to make friends with Xiao Wanru before, and specially sent the things in Infanta Qinghua's dowry to Xiao Wanru. Yes, I will go now. Xiao Zaihuan had to agree with tears in her eyes. Chapter 856. Even if she had many romantic feelings, she was scared out of her wits at this time. At this time, Xiao Zaihuan also found that she had thought too simply. She thought that as long as she thought so, she would have such a good opportunity to do something. She didn't expect that things would develop to this point, and the third branch might even lose their lives. After the third madam asked her to wipe away her tears, she asked her old maid to take Xiao Zaihuan to the Piaoyun courtyard to find Xiao Wanru. In the Piaoyun courtyard, Xiao Wanru frowned slightly and thought about what had happened just now. It was strange, very strange. Why did the Zhao family send the pastry recipes? Moreover, such a big kitchen actually thought that the pastries were very good and didn't raise any objections. It was really strange. Even if there was really something wrong with these pastries, it was her fault. Who would benefit from it? The third madam was doomed to be unable to take care of everything personally because of her health. Which of the unmarried misses in the mansion wanted to intervene in the management of the mansion? Xiao Jie? She didn't look like her. After all, she was a daughter of a concubine, and it was not legitimate, especially when there were so many daughters of lineal descent in the mansion. Xiao Zaihuan? Even if she wanted to intervene in her current situation, she couldn't do anything about it. A woman's appearance was damaged, and the most important thing at the moment was to recuperate. How could she have such a big idea? Xiao Kailing was even more unlikely. So who was secretly plotting against her? Could it be Zhao Shiran, the bride who had just married into the mansion? Although Xiao Wanru didn't think it was credible, she thought about it for the time being. It wasn't that she was suspicious. In her last life, she had died so miserably, but she didn't even know who killed her in the end. After her rebirth, if she didn't pay more attention, she might die with a grievance again. Miss, The third miss came crying and said that she wanted to see you. Chu Le hurried in and reported. Xiao Wanru thought for a moment and nodded. Invite her in. Chu Le left to invite her in. A trace of sadness flashed in Xiao Wanru's eyes. It was very likely that Xiao Zaihuan came at this time because of what had happened before. Judging from Xiao Zaihuan's behavior today, Xiao Zaihuan must have been involved in what had happened in the outer courtyard today. Yu Jia went to the door and lifted the curtain. Xiao Zaihuan came in while crying. When she got inside, Yu Jia put down the curtain. Xiao Wanru stood up and said lightly, "Third sister, please sit down." Anyway, Xiao Zaihuan was her third cousin. "Fifth sister, please save me, save my mother." Xiao Zaihuan fell to her knees. Xiao Wanru dodged it dexterously. She frowned slightly and said unhappily, "Third sister, what do you mean?" "You're my third sister and the third lady of the public house. How can you kneel before me like this? If others saw this, they would think that I was bullying you. If third sister has something to say, just say it. There's no need to act like this." Xiao Wanru was a little angry and her words were a little harsh. However, Xiao Zaihuan also knew that she couldn't provoke Xiao Wanru at this time, so she no longer refused. Chu Le came over to help her up. After standing up, she wiped her tears and said, "Third sister, I really don't mean any harm. I just asked someone to send some wine that may be intoxicating, and the amount is not much. Generally, others won't get drunk. At most, Prince Chen will get drunk and he will be fine after a nap." "Third sister, you have a grudge against Prince Chen, so you want to hurt him?" Xiao Wanru's voice became cold. "No." Xiao Zaihuan still wanted to struggle. "If not, why did you get Prince Chen drunk?" Xiao Wanru didn't allow her to explain too much and pressed her. I actually have another meaning." Xiao Zaihuan stammered. It was difficult for her, an unmarried daughter, to say this kind of thing, especially when Xiao Wanru's two maids were in the room. For a moment she blushed, feeling ashamed. "What other meaning do you have, third sister? You'd better tell me. I really can't guess what third sister's intention is. If the Empress Dowager in the Imperial Palace knows about it, she may not even have time to reason with you." Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice, her eyes became colder, and her delicate little face was covered with frost. She was several years younger than Xiao Zaihuan, but at this time, her momentum made Xiao Zaihuan shocked. Her lips trembled twice, and she gritted her teeth and said, "Fifth sister, it's all my fault. I wanted to hurt Prince Chen, but it was not my intention. It was Zhao Shiran who asked me to do so. After that, the wine seemed to have been tampered with. Otherwise, even if the two princes drank all of it, they wouldn't have fought." The third madam had already reminded Xiao Zaihuan. In addition to Xiao Wanru's warning just now, Xiao Zaihuan didn't dare to hide anything. She ignored her shame and told everything. "First sister-in-law?" Xiao Wanru's eyes narrowed slightly, fell on Xiao Zaihuan, and said in an ambiguous tone. Thinking that Xiao Wanru didn't believe her, Xiao Zaihuan was anxious and hurriedly said, "It's true. The last time Prince Chen came to our mansion, old Madam of Minister Zhao's mansion and Zhao Shiran were also there. Do you remember?" At this time, Xiao Zaihuan also hated Zhao Shiran deeply. The third madam's words made her realize that she might have really fallen into Zhao Shiran's trap. At this time, of course, she said everything. For fear that Xiao Wanru wouldn't believe her, she deliberately told the whole story, including the correct time and address. After she finished speaking, Xiao Wanru nodded after thinking for a moment, agreeing with Xiao Zaihuan's point of view. Xiao Zaihuan breathed a sigh of relief, but Xiao Wanru's next words immediately made her feel nervous again. "Third sister, even if I can understand it, others must think that it's third sister or third aunt's idea. If others know that third sister has such an idea, I'm afraid that third sister will not be able to get married in the future. Not only third sister, but also fourth sister. Third aunt will not have a good ending with grandma." Xiao Wanru said calmly. As soon as she said this, Xiao Zaihuan's body went limp and her face was as pale as snow. This was what she was most afraid of. This was also the reason why she didn't dare to accuse Zhao Shiran without evidence. Even if Zhao Shiran told her, it would not be a big deal. Her words sounded like persuasion. What's more, she couldn't tell Xiao Zaihuan about her brother-in-law. She couldn't even tell her biological grandma, because Xiao Zaihuan had always known her grandma's partiality. Her mother might even be sent out to recuperate because of her poor upbringing. After all, Xiao Zaihuan was not a scheming person. At this time, she was already flustered. She trembled and asked Xiao Wanru for advice. Fifth sister, what should we do now? What should we do? She had no idea now. She just wanted to get away with her father, mother, and their family. Being in the king's company was like being with a tiger. It was the same for Prince Jin. She would rather marry into an ordinary family and seek a lifetime of peace. At this time, it was fake to have too many ideas. She just wanted to live in peace. Third sister, you really didn't ask someone to put something else in the wine? Xiao Wanru asked. Someone must have done something in it. Xiao Zaihuan was the cause, but who else was it? Zhao Shiran? This was unlikely. Even if Zhao Shiran could arrange a few servants in the mansion, it was impossible for him to arrange such a person. Since Xiao Zaihuan had ulterior motives, the person who sent the wine was either her confidant or the third madam's confidant. Such a confidant was basically impossible to be bribed by Zhao Shiran. I really didn't. Fifth sister, although I was wishful thinking, I didn't dare to really put anything in it. Prince Qin is well known for his poor health. If he really made a big deal because of something in it, the whole Duke Xing's mansion might be buried with him. I didn't dare to do it even if I thought about it. Xiao Zaihuan wiped her tears and shook her head. She really didn't dare to do such a thing. She just hoped that Prince Qin could be helped to have a rest after he got drunk. As for other things, she really didn't think about anything else. After they got drunk, they would lie together and tear their clothes to pieces, and then let others see it. Anyway, she was just a concubine, so it didn't matter if her reputation was slightly damaged. Moreover, the other party was the descendant of the emperor. Seeing Xiao Zaihuan shake her head and refuse, Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice to hide the deep doubt in her eyes. It was certain that someone had done something to it. If it wasn't someone from the mansion, then there was another possibility. Fifth sister, please help me. Please tell Prince Qin about it. I won't dare to do it again. I won't do it again. Xiao Zaihuan begged. Third sister, I don't know how to deal with it until now. I haven't gone out since I returned to the Piaoyun courtyard, so I don't know what grandma and second uncle think. Xiao Wanru shook her head and said, she couldn't take charge of this matter. She was just the unmarried fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion and didn't have so much power. Then what should I do? I really didn't do it on purpose, and I didn't do anything else. Second uncle wants to send all the servants to the palace and let the emperor's servants interrogate them. Fifth sister, what should I do? What should I do? Xiao Zaihuan looked at Xiao Wanru in despair and said, send all of them to the palace and let the emperor deal with them? Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Yes, he said that all of them will be sent to the palace. Xiao Zaihuan said with a cry. She was at a loss and panicked now, only hoping that Xiao Wanru could reach out and help her. Third sister, the reason why you sent the wine should be reasonable. Is there anything missing? Xiao Wanru asked as usual. It's very reasonable. There's nothing missing. It's just that my mother sent good wine to the three princes. There's nothing else. Even if it's my mother's servant who sent the wine, she thinks that my mother wants to please the three princes. Xiao Zaihuan was still very clear at this time. She thought while crying. In this case, third sister, you don't have to panic. You don't know this matter, and neither does third aunt. Third aunt is in charge of the affairs of the backyard. It's very possible that some servants are loyal to the old master. Xiao Wanru reminded Xiao Zaihuan meaningfully. The so-called old master, of course, referred to the second branch's madam of Duke Xing, Madame Jiang. Of course, now Madame Jiang was not here, so it was unlikely to be Madame Jiang. Then who else in the second branch could be considered the old master? Who wanted to take away the right to be the housekeeper? Why was a newly married woman so aggressive? This was what Xiao Wanru couldn't figure out at the moment. Even if she wanted to seize power, it was not the right time. Was Zhao Shiran so eager to take charge of the backyard? Chapter 857. Xiao Zaihuan's eyes suddenly widened. She opened her mouth but didn't make a sound, and resentment flashed across her eyes. Madame Jiang was not in the mansion, nor was Xiao Yenru. If there was anyone else who might intervene here, it would be the new bride of the mansion. The servants in the mansion used to follow Madame Jiang, the second wife. Now that Madame Jiang was not here, it was Zhao Shiran who was most likely to make the servants obey her orders. She remembered that it was impossible for her to have such an idea before. It was only after Zhao Shiran persuaded her that she came up with this idea. Xiao Zaihuan was not hopelessly stupid. She was so angry that her face turned pale. Third sister, there has to be an end to this matter. I'm afraid that the mansion wants to push third aunt away now. If you want to save yourself, you have to do it before someone from the Imperial Palace gives the order. Xiao Wenru smiled slightly and said softly. Xiao Zaihuan had seen the scene in her grandmother's room just now and also saw her grandmother and her second uncle's coercion of her mother, which was caused by her. For a moment, she felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. It was all her mother's fault. She couldn't let her mother be pushed out to take the blame. The cause of this matter was clearly the second branch. Why did they push the blame to her? Thinking that her mother's health was harmed because of her second aunt, she felt a burning pain in her heart. Her mother had asked her to pay attention to the people in the second branch, saying that they were all very shrewd and asking her not to have too much contact with them. However, she was so careless that she had been deceived by Zhao Shiran. The more she thought about it, the more resentful and annoyed she became. She couldn't swallow it no matter what. She gritted her teeth and turned to leave. She couldn't help letting others push the blame to her mother. Even if she couldn't tell the whole story, she could bring it to Zhao Shiran. After all, this was Duke Xing's mansion, not Minister Zhao's mansion. It would not be so easy for Zhao Shiran to seize power after entering the mansion. Seeing Xiao Zaihuan leave with a livid face, Yu Jie asked, "Miss, where are you going, third miss?" Xiao Wenru glanced out of the window coldly and saw Xiao Zaihuan walking away quickly. She raised the corners of her mouth silently and said, "Some people always think that they are very smart and think that they can play others in the palm of their hands. In fact, others are not so stupid. When they fight to the death, they may not have the upper hand." Her words were vague, so Yu Jie didn't understand. She blinked her eyes and thought it was better to ask some questions that were not so vague. "Did third miss go to trouble second grandma?" Xiao Wenru nodded. "Actually, third miss, you don't have any evidence. Moreover, I don't think second grandma is so stupid as to really attack the two princes. This kind of thing will be a big deal." Yu Jie subconsciously muttered to herself. "She really didn't do it," Xiao Wenru said lightly. She had an answer in her heart. Although it had not been confirmed, it should be the answer. However, although she didn't do it, Zhao Shiran was obviously stirring up trouble. Whether it was the previous pastry incident or Xiao Zaihuan's incident, since he had stretched out his hand, he couldn't take it back. No evidence? A newcomer who had just entered the mansion? Sometimes, not everything needed evidence. It was not so difficult for all the people to agree with each other. Xiao Zaihuan was actually a double-edged sword, especially at this moment, when Xiao Zaihuan still wanted to protect herself. Zhao Shiran had been sitting on the bed for a long time. After waiting for so long, Xiao Hua and didn't come back. She couldn't help but frown tightly and felt very uneasy. "Miss, let me go to inquire about it." Qiu Yu, the maid who came with her, also felt uneasy. "Oh wait, we have just arrived at Duke Xing's mansion, so we can't act rashly." Zhao Shiran shook her head and slowly relaxed her frown. She was just a newlywed. Even if there was something, she didn't need to care about it. Nothing had anything to do with her. Whether it was the third branch or the second branch, it must be her who had just entered the mansion as a newlywed, so it was impossible for her to have anything to do with it. "Miss, let me go to the door to have a look?" Another maid, Qiu Lian, suggested. This time, Zhao Shiran didn't refuse and nodded. When Qiu Lian walked to the door and went out, she saw Xiao Zaihuan rushing into the yard angrily. She hurriedly stepped aside and saluted, "Third miss." Xiao Zaihuan was here to make trouble now. She came over, pushed Qiu Lian away, and strode inside. The The pearl curtain hanging at the door was pulled down by her, and the pearls that had been hanging on it slid down one by one and fell to the ground. Zhao Shiran stood up from the bed and looked at Xiao Zaihuan, who had rushed in, with a displeased face. She said in a soft voice, "Third sister, what do you mean?" "What do I mean? Sister-in-law, you are really good at pretending. You have only been in the mansion for 1 day, but you have seduced second aunt's former confidants and made them listen to you. You even asked them to drug the 2 princes' wine, so that mother would be reprimanded and take away mother's right to manage the family." Xiao Zaihuan shouted angrily, trembling with anger. Originally, 30% of what she said was true, and 70% was what she came up with. But when she said it, she found that it couldn't be true. Otherwise, Zhao Shiran wouldn't have picked her to do it. Zhao Shiran was the one who benefited the most from this matter. "What are you talking about, third sister?" Zhao Shiran's face darkened and became cold. "Don't you understand what I'm talking about? Don't you always like to stir up trouble behind people's backs? You said that she was a talented woman and that she was no match for men. If it's about viciousness, men are indeed no match for her. I thought that eldest brother married a good woman, but now it seems that she is a second aunt." Xiao Zaihuan was so angry that she pointed at Zhao Shiran and shouted abuse. "Third sister, I don't know what you're talking about, but you shouldn't be disrespectful to your elders." Zhao Shiran's face became colder and colder, but his words were very orderly. He didn't talk about his grievances, but only talked about Xiao Zaihuan's belittling of Madame of Jiang. "Don't use second aunt as an example. What did second aunt do to end up like this? Others might not know, but how could our manor not know? There's no need for you to pretend to be kind here. But the relationship between eldest sister-in-law and second aunt is really good. She has taken over all second aunt servants in the mansion and is ready to make waves in Duke Xing's mansion." Xiao Zaihuan didn't care at all and still said angrily. Her voice was sharp and angry, and all the servants in the yard heard it. Someone had already seen that the situation was not right and hurriedly reported it to old madam. It seemed that something was going to happen in the bridal chamber. "Third sister, why do you have to slander the elders? Even if the elders are wrong, it's not something that we juniors should talk about," Zhao Shiran said coldly. Xiao Zaihuan couldn't defeat Zhao Shiran in an argument. Seeing her beautifully dressed face, she suddenly became angry and waved her hand to slap her. How could Zhao Shiran let her slap her? She took a step back. Qiu Yu hurriedly stepped forward to stop Xiao Zaihuan. "Third miss, our master has just married into Duke Xing's mansion. You are so rude and unreasonable. Is it because you don't want our master to marry into Duke Xing's mansion? If so, please go and make it clear to old madam of your mansion that our master doesn't have to marry your first young master." This marriage was indeed proposed by Duke Xing's mansion, and it had been proposed for so many years. It could be said that Duke Xing's mansion had begged for a daughter-in-law. How could the servants of Minister Zhao's mansion say such words? Seeing that she couldn't beat Zhao Shiran and that Zhao Shiran's servant girl dared to say such words, Xiao Zaihuan was so angry that her eyes widened and her face turned blue and white. No matter in words or other things, she couldn't defeat Zhao Shiran in an argument, so she was led astray by a few words. Knowing that if she went on like this, it would be even more difficult to explain, Xiao Zaihuan was so angry that she reached out to pick up a pair of red candles beside her and smashed them to the ground. Her mother, herself, and even the whole third branch were going to be destroyed by this woman. How could Xiao Zaihuan care about anything at this time? "Third miss, how dare you?" Zhao Shiran's face also changed greatly. Although she was not very willing to marry into Duke Xing's mansion, she couldn't let Xiao Zaihuan smash the candles, which was extremely inauspicious for a marriage. "You dare to hurt us, so why wouldn't I dare? Zhao Shiran, do you want to hurt the 2 princes or our third branch? Just tell me. There is no one else in this room. They are either your servant girl or my servant girl. Anyway, their words can't help anyone. Just tell me the truth." Xiao Zaihuan screamed, looked at the candles on the ground, and stamped on them hard. The originally red dragon and phoenix candles were immediately broken by her, and the sparks were also extinguished. In the bridal chamber, the candles could not be extinguished at this time. The faces of the two dowry maids changed greatly when they saw this. Zhao Shiran was so angry that his voice trembled. "Third Miss Xiao, what do you mean? I've been sitting in this room without even going out. What have I done to make Third Miss Xiao so angry? How dare you curse me here? Well. If Third Miss Xiao doesn't give me a reason today, I'll go back to Zhao's mansion immediately and forget about the marriage." No one could bear such a thing as soon as they entered the mansion. Zhao Shiran felt that he was a cultured person, but he was still trembling with anger at Xiao Zaihuan's rudeness. The miss of Duke Xing's mansion was really unruly. How dare she do such a thing? It was simply unheard of. "I don't mean anything. I just want to ask you why you want to hurt the two princes like this." Xiao Zaihuan, who had suffered a loss in words just now, was also smart at this time. She no longer talked about the immediate matter and directly brought up the biggest disaster. "What nonsense are you talking about?" The half-closed door of the room was pushed open heavily, and the two people in the room looked back at the same time. When they saw a group of people appearing at the door, they took a step back at the same time. Such a big movement, as expected, alarmed Old Madam. Seeing the beads rolling on the ground and Xiao Zaihuan's aggressive look, Old Madam's face turned pale with anger. Chapter 858. The third miss has been locked up? It was late when the Piaoyun courtyard got the news. Xiao Wanru didn't deliberately ask someone to inquire about it, so she got the news much later. Yes, she is also locked up in the small temple at the back with the second miss as her companion. I heard that Old Madam even asked someone to beat the third miss before locking her up. After the third madam heard the news, she came to beg Old Madam, but Old Madam didn't agree. After that, she fainted not long after kneeling in Old Madam's courtyard. Nanny Yu sorted out the news she got and reported. This matter became a little bigger, and the whole mansion knew about it. Later, although Old Madam issued a gag order, it was too late. Those who should know had already known. Even some guests who stayed in the front yard were talking about it. The servants stopped talking, but the guests were still talking about it. For a time, rumors spread everywhere. Nanny Yu just went to the front yard. She didn't deliberately inquire about it, but just listened for a while and got the news she wanted. "Where's third uncle?" Xiao Wanru asked calmly. She had underestimated her third uncle in the past. He could force her second uncle to give up Xiao Jie's marriage. Whether it was her second uncle's other plan or not, it showed that her third uncle also had something that her second uncle was afraid of. The third master heard that the third madam fainted. After making a scene, he took the third madam back, but the third miss was still locked up. Nanny Yu thought for a while and said, "Who is hosting the banquet outside now?" Xiao Wanru asked again. "The Duke is hosting the banquet outside, and Old Madam is hosting inside, but..." Nanny Yu hesitated when she said this. "What's wrong?" Xiao Wanru looked up at Nanny Yu. "I heard that the new grandma is going back to the mansion." Nanny Yu had never heard of such a thing. A newly married woman wanted to leave after the wedding ceremony. It was better not to tell this kind of thing to an unmarried Mississippi. But after thinking about it, Nanny Yu still told the truth. Her miss was not an ordinary master. Has she gone back? Xiao Wanru was not surprised by this. Xiao Taihuan made a scene in the bridal chamber and blamed everything on Zhao Shiran. If Zhao Shiran had no reaction and kept it to herself, she would not be the Zhao Shiran she had imagined. Of course, Old Madam won't let her go back. I heard that she even asked someone to guard the bridal chamber, Nanny Yu said. A smile flashed across Xiao Wanru's face. After all, this was Duke Xing's mansion. Old Madam couldn't let such a scandal happen in Duke Xing's mansion. Even if there were rumors outside now, it was better than Zhao Shiran really going back. Old Madam had always valued the interests of Duke Xing's mansion above everything else. Zhao Shiran didn't really want to make trouble and just wanted to express her grievance. But in Old Madam's eyes, it was one disaster after another. Even though she used to like Zhao Shiran very much, she would definitely change her mind this time. Is there any news from the palace? After asking about the matters in the mansion, Xiao Wanru asked again. This old servant hasn't. Just as Nanny Yu was about to say that she hadn't heard of it, she suddenly saw Chu Lu rushing in. "Miss, old madam asked you to go out with her. She said that there is an imperial decree." Chu Lu wiped the hot sweat from running out and said anxiously. Xiao Wenru nodded, stood up, and walked out with Chu Lu. Calculating the time, the imperial decree should be issued soon. It was impossible to delay until tomorrow. After such a big thing had happened, if the imperial palace still hadn't reacted, it would be too slow. In the hall, all the masters of Duke Xing's mansion had arrived, including Xiao Zaihuan, who had just been beaten and locked in the temple, and Zhao Xiran, who was grounded in the bridal chamber. Xiao Wenru came early, and the third madam was the last to come. The third madam, whose face was pale without a trace of blood, was tottering. She held Xiao Keiling's hand on one hand and the third master of Duke Xing's mansion on the other. She swayed with every step, and it was obvious that she was not in a good state. Seeing that everyone was here, the eunuch who delivered the decree announced the emperor's decree. It said that the two princes' wine had been drugged, so that the two princes had lost their manners. Duke Xing's mansion was asked to find out who did it. Moreover, Duke Xing and Old Madam were severely reprimanded for not managing their own mansion's affairs well. Duke Xing's mansion was fined 1 year's salary, and Duke Xing's mansion was downgraded to Marquis Xing's mansion. Hearing this decree, Old Madam's legs went soft, and she collapsed to the ground. She rolled her eyes and fainted directly. The third madam tried her best to support Old Madam, but she was pulled to the ground with her. Xiao Jing stared blankly. He knew that this matter would definitely not end well. Neither of the two princes was the most favored prince of the emperor. With the emperor's mind, if there was no accident, the future emperor would be one of the two princes. But no matter what, he did not expect that the emperor would directly revoke the title of Duke Xing's mansion. Changing the title of Duke Xing's mansion to that of Marquis Xing's mansion could only be done in a mansion that had committed a serious crime. Of course, it could also be seen that Duke Xing's mansion was not favored by the emperor now. Among the aristocratic families in the capital city, Duke Xing's mansion had always been known to be favored by the emperor. Both the old Duke Xing and the former heir of Duke Xing were favored by the emperor, and Duke Xing's mansion had been thriving. According to this trend, everyone could see that Duke Xing's mansion was very prosperous. "Oh no, Marquis Xing, please accept the decree." After the eunuch finished announcing the decree, he raised his voice and said in a sharp voice, which almost sounded like sarcasm in Xiao Jing's ears, "I accept the decree." He lowered his head, forced himself to suppress the trembling in his heart, and said respectfully, "Marquis, what's going on in your mansion? Several princes came to congratulate you, but such a thing happened. It's really—" The eunuch shook his head and looked very speechless. He was indeed speechless about this matter. Nothing happened to others, but it was the two princes who had an accident. Moreover, they lost their manners and fought with each other. Even though they could not find out anything now, and this matter was related to Duke Xing's mansion, it was really too heavy to directly demote Marquis Xing's mansion. However, people with discerning eyes had seen that now Duke Xing's mansion was becoming less and less valued by the emperor. Previously, the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion had an accident in the palace, and there was a faint rumor that it caused the two princes to fight with each other. Could it be that this was a continuation of the original matter? If this was the case, Marquis Xing should be punished indeed. He made the two princes lose face again, and he also disgraced the entire royal family. From this point of view, the emperor's punishment was not excessive. The royal family's face could not be disgraced by anyone. "Eunuch, can I ask you how to deal with this matter next?" Xiao Jing personally pulled up the jade pendant hanging on his waist, handed it to the eunuch who delivered the decree, and said with a flattering smile, "In fact, this matter was not over yet. Marquis Xing, I really don't know about this matter, but several princes were almost killed this time. The Empress Dowager and the Empress are very angry." The eunuch took the jade pendant, and the smile on his face was much more real, like a flower. "Eunuch, what do you mean?" Seeing that the eunuch was easy to talk to, Xiao Jing pulled the eunuch aside to talk. He was still at a loss. "There has to be an explanation for this matter," the eunuch said with a smile. "Tell me about it." Xiao Jing lowered his voice and asked. He didn't even look at the ladies who were in a mess. "This kind of thing always happens in your manor," the eunuch said meaningfully. He rolled his eyes, but there were some things that he couldn't say too clearly. "The emperor is very angry and is still investigating this matter." "Eunuch, our mansion has arrested all the servants who sent the wine and dishes at that time. Can you take them to the palace? No matter who committed the crime, I will not cover it up. Now all the people who have been in contact with them are here. No one is missing and no one is injured." Xiao Jing handed over another banknote. This was his way of expressing his innocence. He did not lack a single person, nor did he lack a single person. He sent all of them to the palace and did not interrogate them. He did this to show that he had a clear conscience and did not do anything. He hoped that the emperor would understand his innocence and his intentions. The eunuch understood his intention. Moreover, he came here today to take them away. Even if Marquis Xing wanted to interrogate them himself, the emperor would not agree. Marquis Xing was smart. He smiled more brightly and nodded repeatedly. The banknote in his hand slipped into his sleeve skillfully. The eunuch raised his voice and said, "Okay, then I'll take him away for you, With a wave of his hand, several guards came in from outside the hall. Xiao Jing hurriedly asked his manservant to take the guards away. They had already been isolated and locked away. The eunuch watched the guards take them away with a smile and then said goodbye to Xiao Jing. His attitude was much more amiable than when he came. It could be seen that Xiao Jing was really innocent this time. He didn't know whether the people of Duke Xing's mansion had done something wrong or someone else had interfered. The original duke could only admit that he was unlucky. Xiao Wanru watched this farce extremely calmly. She also saw the servants hugging old madam and shouting in panic one after another, as if old madam was really dying. In addition to the servant girls and old maids of old madam, the servant girls and old maids of third madam also did not show any weakness. They kept shouting, "Third madam, wake up." For a moment, the hall was filled with cries and miserable cries. The womenfolk staggered as if the entire Duke Xing's mansion had been searched. Xiao Wanru closed her eyes slightly, and her long eyelashes fluttered together. She tilted her head and lay on Chu Li's shoulder. "Miss, fifth miss." Chu Lu understood and hurriedly stuttered, looking like she was frightened and at a loss for what to do. Old madam and third madam had fainted for a while, and the servants of both sides had almost stopped crying. Chu Li's voice startled everyone. Of course, the most important thing was that Xiao Wanru's identity was different now. If she was just an ordinary miss of Marquis Xing's mansion, no one would pay attention to her at this time. What's going on? Xiao Jing had just sent the eunuch away. Hearing this, he hurried over and asked. Our miss was fine just now, but suddenly fainted. Chu Li's face was pale and full of anxiety. Why did she suddenly faint? Xiao Jing looked at Xiao Wanru's lowered face suspiciously. If she had fainted because of the shock like old madam, it had been a long time. Her reaction was too slow. Chapter 859. I don't know. My miss was fine just now, but suddenly... Chu Lu patted Xiao Wanru's back and said in a low voice. Does my miss have any unmentionable disease? Xiao Jing said impatiently. At this time, he was full of thoughts and didn't want to hear the crying in the living room at all. He felt inexplicably annoyed. In order to prove his innocence, he sent her out, but he didn't feel confident. He could guarantee that he didn't do it, but what about others? My miss doesn't have any unmentionable disease, but she is in poor health. When she was in the Yuhui nunnery, she had to recuperate from time to time. Chu Lu felt wronged and wiped her face with a handkerchief. Take your miss away. Xiao Jing waved his hand impatiently, turned around and strode away. He really didn't want to care about the backyard anymore. What happened today was so unexpected that he couldn't recover for a while and didn't have the mood to care about it. Father, Xiao Huan said. Come with me. Xiao Jing ordered. Father. Xiao Hua, and looked at Zhao Xiran beside him. He stopped Xiao Jing because he wanted to go back with Zhao Xiran first. Come here first. Xiao Jing ignored his childish thoughts and looked at Zhao Xiran, who was standing aside with his eyes lowered. He frowned unhappily and then turned around and strode away. What Xiao Zaihuan did was wrong, but if there was nothing wrong in Zhao's mansion, Xiao Zaihuan wouldn't have gone crazy and made such a scene. He couldn't find out anything now, but in general, this new daughter-in-law might have something wrong. If it was really related to Zhao's mansion, this daughter-in-law was really unlucky and not a good thing. In fact, it was Madame Jiang who wanted to marry into Minister Zhao's mansion the most. He had thought that this daughter-in-law was reliable, but now it seemed that she didn't know what to do. If she hadn't been brought into Marquis Xing's mansion, Xiao Jing would have sent her back. He couldn't bear to see his son still being jealous at this time. Yes. Xiao Hua, and didn't dare to refuse and could only leave with Xiao Jing. Miss. The servant girl beside Zhao Shiran called her softly. At this time, Zhao Shiran's expression had already calmed down. She, who was wearing a bright red dress, stood alone at the side, looking a little more miserable. Looking up at Xiao Hua, Anne's back in the messy hall, Zhao Shiran walked towards Madame Dowager. Among the people who stayed, the third branch had the most people. At this time, they all went to see the third madam. The old madam seemed to be much weaker because there was no master to serve her. When Zhao Shiran came over, the servants immediately made way for him. Zhao Shiran walked up to old madam, took old madam from Nanyu's hands, looked at old madam's pale face, stretched out his hand to hold old madam's hanging hand, and skillfully pinched old madam's hand between the thumb and index finger. Old madam let out a low cry and slowly woke up. Old madam! Zhao Shiran looked at old madam with tears in her eyes and said softly. Although she looked aggrieved, she looked very calm and didn't want to make a fuss. This made old madam, who had just woken up, feel a little better and gradually wake up. There were still the panicked voices of the maids and old maids, mixed with the crying voices of Xiao Zihuan and Xiao Keiling. Old madam immediately recalled the situation just now, and she was so angry that her eyebrows and eyes immediately straightened. She stood up with the help of Nanny Yu and Zhao Shiran, looked at the messy hall, and shouted angrily, "Shut up!" As soon as they heard old madam's rebuke, the servants of the third branch immediately didn't dare to make a sound. Mother! The third master was displeased and wanted to say that the third madam was still unconscious. Get out of here. Don't make trouble here. If it weren't for them, such a thing would not have happened. Old madam pointed at the people of the third branch with disgust, including the third madam, Xiao Zihuan, and Xiao Keiling. Mother, how can you? The third master was very unconvinced. Get out of here. Do you want to collect the corpses here? Old madam was full of anger at this time and suddenly blurted out, when the emperor finds out that this matter has something to do with them, you can't escape. Thinking of the people taken away by the guards just now, the third master also panicked. Although he was not promising, he still held an idle position. If he was really implicated, not to mention losing his idle position, he was afraid that even his life would be in danger. Go back. The third master was not in the mood to coax the third madam, so he waved his hand and said angrily. Seeing that the crowd helped the third madam away, the third master also followed them and left. Xiao Wanru also woke up at this time. She stood aside with Chu Li's help and quietly watched the farce in front of her. She also saw the third madam's slightly trembling eyes. Obviously, the third madam should have woken up and didn't wake up to avoid responsibility. This time, old madam really hated the third madam to the extreme. Grandma. Seeing that almost all the people in the hall had left, Zhao Shiran said again. Old madam looked her up and down. Seeing that her behavior was still gentle, she snorted coldly and said rudely, "Does your Zhao's mansion have anything to do with what happened today?" Her favorite granddaughter was so gentle, and she also liked her very much. However, as soon as she entered the Imperial Palace, she ended up like this. Old madam was angry at the thought of it. Now seeing Zhao Shiran's similar appearance, she inexplicably felt that she must have other intentions, so her words were extremely unpleasant. Zhao Shiran was still a newcomer, so how could she stand these words? Tears immediately came down on her face, and she cried with tears, "Old madam, the Zhao's mansion will never intervene in this matter. If you don't believe it, you can send someone to investigate it. Investigate Minister Zhao's mansion? Especially at this time, old madam snorted coldly in her heart and became more and more unhappy. It's better not to intervene. The emperor has taken all the people away. What will be said next is not up to our mansion. The sarcasm in her words was very obvious. Zhao Shiran's face turned red, and she looked at old madam with shame and shame. She pointed at her sleeve and left, but there was nothing she could do. After calming down, Zhao Shiran turned to Xiao Wanru, who was the only one still here. Fifth sister, first sister-in-law, I'm not feeling well, so I can't accompany you. Xiao Wanru said weakly. She did look listless. After such a thing happened in the mansion, coupled with the noise just now, no one was in the mood to talk about it. It was reasonable for Xiao Wanru to say so. After bowing to Zhao Shiran, Xiao Wanru staggered away with Chu Li's shoulder. Before figuring out Zhao Shiran's purpose, she would not be too close to Zhao Shiran. Whether it was Zhao Shiran who did it today or Minister Zhao's mansion behind Zhao Shiran who did it, it now fell on Zhao Shiran's head. In fact, Zhao Shiran would not be wrong too much. Judging from Zhao Shiran's appearance, she did not look like an ordinary bride. After marrying into Marquis Xing's mansion, she was not as happy as others imagined. It even made people feel that she was actually not very happy in her heart. As for some small tricks, she must have done something. However, since she was unwilling, why did she marry into Marquis Xing's mansion in such a hurry and even seem to solve the problems of Marquis Xing's mansion? She was going to get married in a month. If there was a serious manager in the mansion, it would be much better. At this time, Zhao Shiran, who was married into the mansion, would definitely be in charge of the affairs of the backyard. After all, old madam had always disliked the third madam, so she had no choice but to let the third madam take charge. In this case, a new question arose. Why was Zhao Shiran in such a hurry? Originally, the responsibility of this matter would fall on her head. Was she in a hurry to lose power? Seeing that all the people of Marquis Xing's mansion had left, leaving only Zhao Shiran and her two dowry maids, who did not even have anyone to lead the way for her, the two maids were extremely angry. Miss, they have gone too far. Today is your wedding day, Qiu Yu said angrily. Qiu Lian was also very angry. She stared at Xiao Wanru's back and said with hatred, they said that she has a good character and even the emperor praised her. Look at what they have done. How dare they leave you here alone, miss? The more the two maids thought about it, the angrier they became. When their spoiled miss was in the minister's mansion, she had always been the apple of the minister's and old madam's eyes. How could she be looked down upon by the people of Marquis Xing's mansion now? What happened in the mansion had nothing to do with Mississippi Miss had been in the bridal chamber all the time. The people of Marquis Xing's mansion were really unreasonable. Miss. Qiu Yu was about to speak again, but was stopped by Zhao Shiran, who waved her hand and said, don't talk nonsense. Fifth sister is the future Princess Qin. How can others talk about her at will? Let's go. As he said, he walked out calmly, as if he had suppressed all the grievances just now. He had suffered so much on his wedding day, but he didn't complain at all. He did have the demeanor of a big family. Seeing that their miss did not say anything, the two maids could only bear it at this time, no matter how angry they were. They followed Zhao Shiran to the bridal chamber with a straight face. Fortunately, they had come to the yard of the bridal chamber several times in the past to deliver some decorations. At this time, they could find the place without the guidance of the people of Marquis Xing's mansion. After they left, Xiao Wanru's figure flashed out from the corner of the wall. She looked at Zhao Shiran's back thoughtfully with her watery eyes. He was still able to keep his composure at this time. Just for this, Xiao Wanru had to think highly of Zhao Shiran. After she married into the mansion, almost all the elders didn't like her, and it even caused a dispute between the second branch and the third branch, which even caused the emperor to intervene. Normal women would either panic or cry helplessly, but Zhao Shiran was still so calm. Go and check whether her two maids have done anything after she entered the mansion today. Or have they seen someone in our mansion and talked to each other in private? Xiao Wanru said softly. Judging from Zhao Shiran's appearance, this matter should not be directly related to her, so it could only be related to her maids. She wanted to see what the new sister-in-law of the mansion intended to do. She was watertight and calm. Xiaohua, and thought to himself that no matter what the elders in the mansion thought of Zhao Shiran, he would definitely treat her well and not let her suffer too much. Without old madam and the third madam, plus what had happened yesterday, Duke Xing's mansion had become Marquis Xing's mansion. Everyone was unhappy. The original jubilant banquet became silent and serious. No one was in the mood to smile. Not to mention Xiao Jing, who looked worried. Even the unmarried Mrs. didn't smile at all. When they received the gifts from Zhao Shiran, they all bent their knees to show their gratitude. Then they stepped aside after showing their gratitude. Nanny Yu appeared at the door. After coming in, she handed the cards in her hand to Xiao Jing and said, Marquis, these are the cards that old madam asked me to send. Let the new madam take charge of the affairs. The third madam can't afford it now. In fact, this was something that could not be helped. There was no official supervisor in the inner courtyard of the mansion. When the third madam took charge of the affairs, she knew that it was only temporary. She did not expect that such a thing would happen now. The third madam had no intention of taking over the affairs. The next thing was Xiao Wanru's marriage, so there was no room for mistakes. Originally, the intention of the mansion was to wait for Zhao Shiran to take charge of the affairs after she married into the mansion. With her help, it would be easier for the third madam, and she could also learn from her. But now they directly sent the cards to Zhao Shiran, which meant that all the affairs were thrown to Zhao Shiran. Father, it was originally third aunt who took charge of the affairs. It is not appropriate for Zhao Shiran to take charge at this time. She has just married into the mansion and doesn't know much about anything. Xiaohua and stepped forward and refused. Now the people in the mansion are all sick and dizzy. Who else is there except her? Xiao Jing said impatiently. There was no smile on his round face at all. When he looked at others, he looked a little gloomy, no longer smiling like before. Father! Xiaohua still wanted to say something, but Xiao Jing had already stood up and strode out. If it were not for the recognition, he would have gone out to inquire about the news at this time. As soon as Xiao Jing left, Third Master Xiao also left. The living room became quiet with a bit of a weird atmosphere. There should have been a lot of people who wanted to recognize the relatives, at least some elders of the Xiao family who were close to them. But now there was no one. Except for Xiao Jing and Third Master Xiao, the only one left was Xiao Huan and his wife. Third sister. After a weird silence, Zhao Shiran walked to Xiao Zaihuan, smiled at her, and said softly, Third sister, is third aunt in good health? What do you need? If you need anything, just tell me. Although I don't know how to take over now, I will definitely handle it well. Xiao Zaihuan looked up at Zhao Shiran with a gloomy face. Her eyes were very cold, and she didn't respond to Zhao Shiran's kindness at all. She made a scene in the bridal chamber yesterday and was punished. After recognizing the relatives, she would be grounded in the hall. Thank you, first sister. Seeing that she didn't say anything with a cold face, Xiao Kaling said. In fact, she didn't know what had happened yesterday. She only thought that her sister was also crazy to do such a thing. She had an inexplicable sense of guilt for Zhao Shiran. Don't mention it. We will be a family from now on. Zhao Shiran smiled and looked at Xiao Wanru, who was standing on the side, and said, Fifth sister, I may be very busy in the next month. If I do anything wrong, please forgive me. After saying that, she squatted down and bowed to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru moved aside and avoided her bow. She raised her watery eyes and smiled slightly. First sister, you are too polite. She said it in a very distant tone, without any intention of intimacy. However, Zhao Shiran didn't take it seriously. She still looked at her with a smile and said, Fifth sister, if you need anything, please make it clear to me. Otherwise, I really don't know what you mean. Third aunt is not in good health, so I will temporarily take care of her for a while. If I don't do well, don't be angry. I will try my best. She looked around at the three sisters and said in an increasingly gentle and appropriate tone. Seeing that she was so generous and took over the messy internal affairs without any complaint, Xiao and felt both distressed and sad and inexplicably annoyed. His eyes fell on Xiao Zaihuan and he frowned. The reason why everyone was dissatisfied with Zhao Shiran was that Xiao Zaihuan inexplicably broke into her bridal chamber and made a scene, making it seem that Zhao Shiran was the culprit. Hearing Zhao Shiran's words, Xiao Wanru and the others bowed sideways to her and understood what she meant. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Grandma even grounded me in the Buddha Hall. Xiao Zaihuan was the first to turn around and leave. She didn't want to see Zhao Shiran for a while. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that it was right. Especially in the current situation, Xiao Zaihuan increasingly felt that Zhao Shiran was a sinister person and didn't want to stay with her at all. Third sister, I'll go with you. Although Xiao Kailing felt that Zhao Shiran was innocent, Xiao Zaihuan was her biological sister after all, so she naturally followed Xiao Zaihuan. I didn't sleep well last night, so I'll go back first. Xiao Wanru said with a slight smile. Since everyone was going to leave, there was naturally nothing to stay. After everyone left, Xiao Wanru went to the Piaoyun courtyard. Miss, is the third madam really not in charge of the internal affairs? Yu Jie looked at the flower hall behind her curiously and asked in surprise. Xiao Wanru shook her head and slightly raised the corners of her mouth. The third madam won't let it go so easily. The third branch was not valued at all. Her third uncle's position was just an idle one, so he didn't have much money in the past. Now that her two daughters had grown up, the third madam would definitely want to save more money. She hadn't been able to take charge of the family before, but now she had tasted the sweetness, so how could she let it go? Now she just threw everything to Zhao Shiran, which meant that she was outnumbered. Moreover, even for the sake of money, the third madam would not let Zhao Shiran go so easily. He had made such a mess on the first day he entered the mansion. Others might not know it, but how could the third madam not know that her daughter was obviously instigated by Zhao Shiran? Otherwise, it would not be possible for her to cause such a big trouble. However, she couldn't say this kind of thing, so she could only swallow her pride. Of course, the third madam wouldn't just stand by and watch Zhao Shiran remain unscathed. Miss, what does old madam mean? Yu Jie thought for a while and asked. She was worried about another aspect. The third madam was in charge of the dowry before, but now the first grandma is in charge of it. How can we figure it out in a short time? What does old madam mean? She actually gave the right card to the first grandma. Xiao Wanru's dowry involved a lot of things. Even though the third madam was very familiar with it, it was still very troublesome to prepare it. Now Zhao Shiran, who had just arrived in the mansion, was replaced by Yu Jie, who was really not confident. It will be fine, Xiao Wanru said lightly. She was not worried about this matter, which was related to the royal family. Neither the third madam nor old madam could neglect her. Moreover, such a thing had happened at the moment. Marquis Xing's mansion did not dare to owe the royal family anymore. Even his title had been demoted by one level. It was not only a relationship of one level, but also a strong warning. The people in the mansion could understand a lot. At first glance, Zhao Shiran could tell that he was a smart person. Did you find out anything yesterday? She asked casually. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.